welcome back to Wrap Drinks. We're here today with a very dear friend and former boss of mine, Valerie Armstrong, writer, showrunner, producer, executive producer, avid runner. How is everybody feeling today?
Yes, feeling great.
I feel great. Drinking some nice tea with my wrap.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for being on the show.
Yes.
We appreciate you. And Rebecca, thank you for joining us as a co-host this time.
Thank you. Which one of those titles do you want to start with? Avid runner? Smart woman?
Both feeling correct. I feel so new to producing for the most part. I feel like I've been a writer for so much longer. I guess I have. I just did it for free for so long before anybody even wanted me around. And even that took getting used to, calling myself a writer, because so many people say that they're writers, and all that means to them is they have a great idea. They have this really great idea for a movie, and one day it's going to get made, and then they're a writer.
When did that start? Did you start calling yourself like fifth grade? You had this great idea?
Oh my God, no. I started calling myself a writer, I think before I started getting paid for it, but once I started writing every day, I felt like, okay, that's a pain in my ass. I deserve to call myself a writer.
You've earned it.
Yeah, exactly. And even that, it took until I was 27 to really take it seriously.
Okay.
I really thought.
So earlier this year. That's not bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how old I am.
Was there something that made you want to be a writer?
There was something that made me want to be in film and television. I didn't think about having a career in this industry. I didn't even realize there were careers in this industry. Rebecca can tell you, such a planner. I am so obnoxious.
It's just a bunch of people that walked into a room and made something by accident every single time.
Oh, yeah. To be fair, I was like 13. But I remember the day I was like, I bet movies need accountants. And I was like, maybe I'll just be a film accountant because that's so achievable.
How do you feel about it now?
That might be even harder to get into than anything we're doing.
True. I hate math. I don't know what I was thinking.
I think the accounts might actually be doing the real work.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to cover
100%.
up all the money laundering, so it's very hard.
That's correct.
Yeah. This studio rented this studio and then rented it back to themselves for double the price. So where did that...
Don't reveal my secrets first.
Oh, sorry.
Just a bunch of tax write-offs right there.
Yeah.
But
When did your dreams switch from
accounting to writing? I used to say I wanted to produce because I was too afraid to say I wanted to write, because I had always heard writing is harder than acting. And I am so not the type to pick something. I mean, there is no track. There is no, people ask me how I got to where I am, and I want to give them some password. I want to tell them how to do it, how to follow me, but it's not like being a lawyer. You can't, become an associate and then do that for a few years and become partner. There is just no one way. So it took me a long time to really admit that that's what I wanted to try to do. I think I was 21 or 22. I was working as an assistant for this production company. This guy owns all of these pistachio farms in California and made billions of dollars that way. And then also has a production company.
So that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
He was a wonderful first boss. Really great. I was paid $25,000 a year right out of college. Yeah. And
count for inflation. That's a lot more.
Oh, it's pistachio money. That's.
Hey, I lived. I was able to survive at a very bad apartment in Eagle Rock where the garbage disposal would back up into my bathtub.
Shit.
So I would go into my bathroom and see what looked like just chunks of puke on the floor of my bathtub. And it would be 7 a.m. and I would have to take a shower to go to work. And I'd be like, God damn it.
The film business is so glamorous.
So yeah, I think I figured it out right around then. And instead of saying I wanted to produce, which by the way, when you're interviewing for anything, and I don't know if this is true on set, but if you want to be a writer, almost any job you interview for, you don't want to admit that. Because what you're saying is it takes so long to find a job where you're actually working for a writer. You want to work for a management company that reps writers so you can meet a writer, or an agency or a production company. And no one wants to hear that you want to be a writer because everyone wants to hear that you want to be them when you grow up.
Oh.
Interesting.
And if you say you want to be a writer, people assume you're only there until you're not.
Temporarily.
Which, by the way, who wants to be an assistant for their whole life? Nobody. Like, the people need to get over themselves.
Wait, I have a question about it too, because a lot of people, I think, when they graduate from college, have to choose New York or LA if you want to work in film. And you went right to LA, which is not really, I don't know anyone that I've worked with in film business that jumped to New York, but I think it says a lot, writers specifically, like, jump New York a lot. And I don't know a lot of writers. I know a lot of crew members. So I think a lot of people I know went right to New York and then eventually either stayed in New York or went to LA, but you didn't. You went right to LA. So I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about why you made that choice and like what you had learned previous to moving to LA about being a writer, going to LA versus New York.
Yeah.
I did not want to move to LA. I love the snow. I love my family. I love the East Coast. I did not want to admit, again, apparently there's a theme of my life. I don't want to admit things to myself until I have to. But I remember financially just realizing it would cost less to move 3,000 miles away than it would to move 90 minutes away from my parents in New York. And
Never done that math.
And I also
Yeah,
just,
me either.
Percentage-wise, so many of the jobs that I wanted were in LA.
Yeah.
If you want to be on set, totally makes sense to be in New York. I know about myself that I would probably be a pretty terrible set PA. I get really, I want to do a perfect job. I get flustered. It's the same way that I know I shouldn't ever be an agent's assistant or a bartender.
It's a job that's set up for failure. You can't win at any of those jobs. Like, so you would be so
You can win at
miserable.
bartending.
I mean,
Have you ever cleaned up a bar at the end of the night?
100%.
It's so disgusting.
No,
You're
I
not
mean,
winning. You might win for a lot of the evening, but set PA, you're never going to win.
Oh, no.
Assistant, you're never win. You're always fighting the losing battle. So as a perfectionist, I would imagine that would be...
well, I want to talk about that, the writing aspect of like...
Hold on. Can somebody come in here and turn the light switch off?
Oh,
do we have our house light on?
Just the fluorescents are on.
Yikes.
So that's
I mean, is that gonna, is
Good thing we
that
have
gonna change
G&E
the whole
here.
thing? That's gonna change the whole thing.
Yeah, that's gonna
We have to
change
start
it
Is that fine
all.
with everything?
Do it over from the top.
Did it look? Did it? Does it?
No, it's fine. We're leaving this in, so it's cool.
We can talk about how we fucked up the lighting.
You can turn them back. If it didn't look bad, you can turn them back.
No, I feel like
Hey,
it looks
Bert,
better
what do you
now.
do for a living
No,
again?
it's fine. Yeah, Bert's fault.
Bert should have went to LA.
I want to go back to like when you were talking about getting into writing and like you decided 27 you're going to write every single day. What was that change for you? What was that like pivotal moment that you went, this is what I'm going to do?
So up until that point, I had done a bunch of jobs in LA. I took the first job that I could get in entertainment. And that is something I would suggest to anybody looking to get into the business, which is just don't be picky about the first job. The first job, you can meet who you need to meet. Like, it doesn't have to directly correlate to what you want to do. I did not want to assist the head of a pistachio farm / production company for the rest of my life, but I got to meet a lot of great people. A lot of the mystery was taken away from the business, which made it less scary. I learned LA because I drove everywhere for that man. So I did stuff like that for a while until I could get a job that was actually related to writing. And I became a writer's PA on Masters of Sex.
Oh,
And it was my like dream come true. I had just wanted to like be around writers and see what they do, because by then I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I, set up the office. I got lunch for them every day. It was not glamorous. I still remember everybody's coffee order, but like I got to sit in because I worked for great people. They let me sit in the back of the room and watch them work when I had nothing to do. And that job changed my life. The next year they promoted me to writer's assistant, which is like that job is the greatest job that there is besides being a writer. If you want to be a writer, you get to sit in the writer's room. You don't have to actually assist anybody. You're not getting coffee. You're getting coffee brought to you. And you're sitting in the room and you're taking notes for brilliant people. Usually, in my case, really kind, brilliant people.
You can name drop if you want.
It was also a show just like run by women. Michelle Ashford was the creator, showrunner. Sarah Timberman was the executive producer. Amy Lippman was the executive producer. Esther Spalding, and I worked for these women for the next 5 years on different jobs. But as a writer's assistant, you get to pitch. Like if you're in a room full of good people and you earn it, and you actually are helpful. If people don't associate your voice with like being a bummer, that's how I always classify like a great writer's assistant, is when they go to speak, if I'm thinking, oh, thank God this is going to be helpful. By the way, that's true for anybody in the room.
It's not eye rolls and like,
it's or just like,
Bueller.
she's back.
Yeah, like you don't want to, because you want to give everyone a shot, but you do find yourself pretty early on in a room, like 2 or 3 weeks in, kind of knowing who gets it, who's helpful, and who's not. And sometimes it's just a bad fit. Sometimes it's really hard to tell ahead of time. But on that show, I got to pitch. I got to write some scenes that they let me do. And I was like, season 4. And I was like told that the next year I was either going to get half a script or maybe a full script, or they were going to promote me to staff writer. And that is the promotion that changes your life. Like you go from making, at the time, I think I made $1,100 a week, and then it goes up to WJ minimum was $3,400 a week.
Wow.
Like life changing.
Times 3.
Yeah. Just triple your
Life
stuff.
changing. You're in the guild. You like people suddenly maybe want to be your agent because you're making money and you can make them money. Like it just changes everything. So I was like, here we go. Season 5. I'm going to do this. And then the show was canceled.
Oh, shit.
And it was 2016. It was winter of 2016, a dark time.
Did they know it was canceled when they said that to you? So they knew it was like a safe bet?
Nope. No, they were not trying to like keep me around for no reason. You know, it was a bummer. It was a huge bummer. And so suddenly I went from like a step away from my absolute dream job to unemployed. In the winter of 2016. Bummer.
That's terrible.
And there's not like this opportunity to find another show quickly? Does it take a long time?
Like everybody I had just worked for, they all go and start working on their own stuff, which means in 2 years, maybe they'll have a job for you, for the most part. I ended up assisting a friend of one of them, but I went back to assisting, which was hard. When I remember thinking like, God, I didn't miss trying to track down someone to be on a phone call or worrying about whether or not their bone broth was in.
Right.
And by the way, it was, and it spilled all over my new car. My new car smelled like dead animal.
So there's not day playing writing jobs.
Not in my world. Not in there definitely are sort of like punch-up rooms that last for like a week, maybe on a movie, or you can, for a long time, I don't know if you could still do this, you could submit jokes to for the monologue to the Tonight Show.
Oh,
and if they
cool.
used it, you'd get like $75.
Huh.
I never once tried, but yeah, so there's that.
Yeah.
But that first job as a writer is, I mean, whoever gets to write for money, that's crazy hard.
Yeah.
And so I went from being so close to it to being dead unemployed. And I was like, oh, up until that I had been writing, I had a pilot. I just sort of wrote when I wanted to.
Yeah.
Because it felt like during my day job, I was working toward it. And then I realized, oh, no one's going to do this for me. After that show ended, I was like, oh, it is all on me. And then I read about like this writing method of using a timer and doing it every day and not being online, not looking at your phone, listening to music without words. And I was like, I'm going to give it a shot. I had tried a million times to like write seriously.
Consistently.
Yeah. And I was like, let's see how long this lasts.
Did you always have, like, you moved to LA specifically, like, if you could say your dream job, was it always television, or did you think I'm going to write features?
At that time, I loved, how funny is this? Network television.
Wow.
I mean, at the time it was 30 Rock and
New York,
Parks and Recreation and The Office.
The Office.
Like, I loved NBC comedies. and I thought I wanted to write comedy.
Well, you kind of grew up in the Thursday night TV
I
era.
absolutely
So
did.
that's like,
And I was a page actually for NBC
Oh, nice.
that was like the first like very exciting job that I had.
I applied and never got it.
I had the uniform and everything.
oh my God.
Damn.
But also in LA, that program is very, very different. It is way less prestigious.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So
I mean, it was great.
Yes.
You're not like an immortal ghost that lives at 30 Rock.
No. I wish I still had the uniform though. I'll send you a picture of me in the uniform though. I like it a lot. I still have the pins that say like the peacock pin and Valerie A from Milford, Connecticut.
Did you have to give tours as a page in LA?
No, because by the time I did it, like the studio had been bought out and stuff. And also, it's so hard to get into now. It feels like I got into Harvard when like all of the admissions officers were drunk. Like the people who ran the program at the time were not serious.
That's such a weird thing to say about such like a job that does not seem glamorous at all.
It's just so, like, they love to say on the website how it's 10 times harder to get that job than it is to get into Harvard.
Really?
Simply because anybody can apply, because it is online.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was like you had to know the right combination of things to do to get in the program. And I had people who had been in the program tell me what to do.
Okay.
It was a very funny job. It was like going back to college. I was 24. All these kids were right out of school and complaining about the job. And I was like, guys, you don't understand how easy this is. And they had just gotten sued for like toxic behavior at the company. So everyone was so nice.
Yeah.
My God.
You want me to get you coffee? You sure? You want me to get you coffee?
I did a rotation in the digital distribution system, like that department of how to sell, I guess, like how to put VOD up, I don't know. All I remember is that one day I took down the digital distribution system
and still had a job.
NBC Universal. The whole thing.
They were like, not the department for you.
Like my job was to just like go through every title and click one thing on a drop-down menu. And about 300 titles in, I realized I had been clicking the wrong thing in the drop-down menu.
Shit.
like, delete.
And it was like a company-wide, like, can you just take the rest of the day off? Yeah, they didn't fire me.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've been.
I started writing every day December 9th, 2016.
What was the first thing you wrote when you started writing every day?
So I was writing a feature at the time. It was no good.
This anniversary just happened.
Yes, it did. 7 years.
Wow.
7 years of doing an hour every day.
Cheers to you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
cheers.
And by the way, like people ask me what my advice is for writers. I don't think everybody has to work that way. Like that is how my brain works. I think if you want to be a writer, you just have to figure out what makes you productive, what makes you actually produce material that you, at the end of the day, are proud of. And the way that my brain works with just about everything, with running, with writing, with cleaning my house, is if I don't do it for a little while, I don't do it for a long time.
I think that that's a good point to make because you were asking about like different styles of writers and like people might hear this and be like, that's for me. Or there might be a writer that listens and is like, I write my scripts in 3 days and I go for 14 hours a day. They don't write for 3 weeks.
Which like good for you. If
Yeah.
you're one of those people that can check into a hotel and just like write a script over a weekend, God bless. I wish. Like that's just not how, and you know, you and I are writing together.
Very different styles.
Very different styles. Very, very different. But we
what's your
figured
style?
out ways that work for us.
It's interesting because when you talk about like hiring writers in a writer's room and like if you think they'd fit, the only like our styles don't fit, but our style of writing, no, the way that we write doesn't fit, but the style of writing is so similar. And we have like a lot of similar
The ideas match.
taste and like cadence and
Like the way that anybody
timing
chooses
and
to
whatever.
write,
Yeah.
I don't care about in a room.
the
Like
style.
if you take your time to be off on script, your 2 weeks that you have to write a script, and write it all in the first 2 days, and then take the rest of the, and as long as you're turning in something good, I don't care. I
But
do
if
whatever
you
you want.
knew that as a boss, would you feel like anxiety for that? Like, because it's not your style and because you don't do it that way, like if somebody else does it that way, does it like, are you like, oh my gosh, like
I'm getting
it not
flashbacks to
gonna
like
be
high
a
school
good-
project, like group
Yes.
projects. There's like the one person
one
that
person who
that
does it
didn't
the
do
night
their
before.
slides like that,
Yeah.
so that they shouldn't be writers.
right.
Oh,
If you
of course they
didn't do
can.
your slides, don't be a writer.
As long
But
as you
that's-
get it done.
But that's where I'll come in and say,
is that your
that's my
style?
style. And I'm like, I look at Valerie sometimes, who I have so much admiration for the way that you set your timer and write, because it goes against every thing in my brain to like set up my life that way. And so I watch her do it. I'm like, it's like watching a dog walk on its hind legs. I'm like, my God, that's fascinating. And then I'll, be like, oh yeah, I did this scene. I don't know. I was in the shower and I had this idea. So I came
So
out.
here's a quick
and
8 pages,
I wrote
and I
these
just
8
say, fuck
pages
you.
and I send it to
Takes
you.
you 10 days to write 8 pages.
And you edit it in the morning. So we have this system of like, I'll write a bunch and Valerie will edit it. And then by the time it's done, it will know what's the next step. Like, cause I'm not going to write, if I write 8 pages one day, I'm like, I'm good for 4 days. Like I'm not coming back to this. And during that, it's every hour that you write every day, she'll look at the 8 pages or be writing the next scene. And then we'll meet up in like, a couple days and we'll talk about all of that stuff. So it only works. I don't think I could write with 2 people like me. I think
Right.
Oh, I
it
see what
would
you're saying.
be
Right.
a
You need
nightmare.
you need the balance.
You need a type A, type B.
And I don't know. I think maybe you could do 2 people like you. It would just be, I'm not even sure. I feel like it would be more of a competition then. Which
Maybe.
is like,
Maybe.
but I do feel like different styles.
I mean, 2 of me, we would be competitive, sure.
Of course, yes.
They would have finished the script in a day. Like,
No, and the only thing that would make me worry if I knew a writer had only taken 2 days to write a script, is sometimes you can tell if everything was sort of the first thought.
Yeah, you kind of have to like that. Like
It's like it should be hard.
Writing the script means something very different to a lot of people, and like that your 8 pages might not be the same as your 8. Like you,
No.
if they're flushed out or not flushed out or something like that. You know,
Like
it's
the idea, she's been sending me something she's working on, and she's just sent me like 3 versions of an opening for a show, and I'm like, I don't have 3 versions for an opening of a show. I have like one that I like, but that one takes me a long time, and then from there it's tweaking. But like to go, let's see how this works. None of it worked. Let's throw it out. Let's do something completely different. I don't do that.
We talk about this a lot. Like, I'll produce a product. I don't have as much emotional attachment to the physical words as Valerie does. So when she puts them on the page, they're almost perfect in her mind. When I put them, they are. You wrote them. Like, I don't know if they're perfect. I don't know what your idea is.
Is it the first
I
time
meant
they were
that
on the page,
as
though,
a
or is it the 7th
compliment.
draft? Like
It's probably the 7th draft.
By the
in
time
your
I'm
head.
sending it to you,
Yes.
it's the 7th draft.
But for me, I'm just like, da, 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 this person wants it. What do you think of this idea? Click send, like 8 pages. And then I'm not as particular about the first thing that I send to someone as she is. But I have to say with that, like those 8 pages that I might have written that she did some editing on or rewrote entirely, we then will get together. And there was a piece of dialogue for a show that we wrote, 2 hours, 1 line. We sat and talked about it and argued about it. Not argued, discussed. Argued about it. 1 line.
1 line.
1 line for 2 hours.
The only thing that I ever wrote was my senior thesis, and I remember there was one scene where like people got scared and had to run away, and we had like 3 pages of dialogue of like, oh my god, what was that? I don't know. We should check it out. Don't do that. And then we got there to shoot it, and we were like, wouldn't they just fucking run?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like that's like the proofread. Like you're probably the person that sends a text as like a 90 sentence paragraph, and you're the person that sends 18 texts in a row of 1 sentence.
Valerie edits her text too if she makes a mistake.
Absolutely.
She goes back and fixes
Dearest
it.
Rebecca,
Absolutely.
this is your.
I just
I'm just like,
resend it.
Do you know how much I love the edit
I don't
feature?
even know how to use it. I'm just like, whatever. They know that, like, what is it always like?
92
Ducks is
typo,
Fox.
yeah.
Everybody knows ducks is Fox.
But do you guys like when you're writing these scripts and you're going back and forth, there's a lot of like world building and character building. Like, how does that play? Do you guys are on the same page of the vision of the character, the vision of the world?
This is a great thing because this is a very different writing style. Like, Valerie, I know, would be more comfortable with a lot of pre-work.
Mhm.
Like a ton of pre-work before you actually sit down and write a script.
What's the pre-work?
So,
Yeah. Which I think is important to say. Like, you can start the pre-work. I mean, on an average, like, I know when we work on sets, like, and I know this was a big misconception, when we get the production draft, the first thing I've ever worked on, I was like, oh, this is probably like the second draft. And then they print the production draft. Yeah. This is like a show that we wrote together that is
for free that no one asked for.
For free that no one asked for, but everybody's going to love it.
You're on the double salmon draft right now? Is that like the...
We're on like at least 16 and no one's even seen it.
Perfect.
So
But
like, this is years before it would get made. Like we're developing the show. So when you would get white production draft number one.
I don't get those.
When I would get white production draft number one, I'm like, oh, you don't know, like that one line that we spent hours writing could have been 3 years ago before you read it in a production draft. And then somebody comes and is like, that's dumb. Why would they say that? And I was like, we've talked for 17 hours.
It makes me so
about
happy
this.
that now you know my pain.
Yeah, like, and so I don't think that set people understand the development side.
Absolutely.
And I think I think I'm more of a set person. And I think the difference with our career trajectories is because I was a set person before I was a writer, I want instant gratification.
Yes.
Every set person wants it now, faster, done right now. And you coming in as a writer who learned the proper technique of writing, of story document, outline, research, and then when you go off to script, you have 25 pages of years of research that you're going to use and you're going to write that scene.
Or if you're on staff, you have a room full of people helping you get this scene breakdown where you know you have a very good map of where to go.
Bring you up to speed of everything that's already happened.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's really important to talk about, like, there are people with a lot of different writing styles, but if you don't just want to write your own stuff and you want to be in a room, there is some codes of conduct about how scripts are created in rooms.
Like I would say, I think I am so wary of what is sendable in my brain to you, to anybody. Like, that is why I'm so against personally sending a first draft, because I would never send to one of my bosses who wanted to help me and read my stuff, or like if they asked me to try a script or to try a scene, I would do the best job I possibly could and then send it. I don't want to send anybody my first stuff because and not that I'm saying you don't, but like I respect the reader, whether it's the network or my bosses or you or whomever. Like I want it to be as unimpeachable as possible. I always want to get it right the first time. With writing, you never do. You never do. You need notes. You need an outside perspective to say, you know, Rebecca gave me a note on something I'm working on the other day, and I felt like, oh, you idiot. Of course I should have seen that. But you can't see it alone.
But you don't ever lock onto an idea and you're like, I'm going to die on this hill. I got it right the first time.
Okay, so what I've learned is in world building, in running a show, firm but flexible. Like that is what I try to keep in my head, is things need to change all the time. Weather changes, your availability of a location changes, actors don't want to do something, they don't understand something. Like you have to be willing to move things around, to figure it out, to let go. Mm-hmm. But the exception is when it comes down to your understanding of the show, because you are in charge. Yeah. You are the only one thinking about the thing as a whole. You're the only one in that edit. When it comes in and you're like, fuck, why didn't I push harder? Like I needed that and now we're fucked. This won't make sense. We need to figure something out. Like if something is coming after your understanding of the show on a like DNA level, then you won't know how to write it going forward. Like, you know, a bunch of reviews, not that I read many because God, it was painful to do.
Never read the comments.
Never read the reviews. Like the one bad line I'll remember. So I had my brother just kind of give me the gist. And a ton of reviews were like, Kevin should be in single camera in the second season. And it's like, you write that show. What is that show? What are the rules? Is there no multicam anymore? what is he like in single cam that makes him worth watching anymore? What is the commentary? What does that mean? Like, it's such an easy thing to throw out there. But then when you think, okay, what does the rest of the show look like?
Yeah, how does it serve its purpose?
And you're saying like when
So-
you
so
pick and choose things, that would inherently change the entire show.
Exactly.
Whereas like you're gonna die on that hill. That's
I
the hill
will
you're gonna
die on that hill.
Yeah. But you're not gonna die on the hill of like, does he wear a Celtic shirt versus the freaking Red Sox
Absolutely
shirt?
not.
Yeah. Because
Let's back up. Let's back up for 1 second because you just name dropped a character, but we haven't introduced Kevin Can Fuck Himself.
right.
So your show, the show that like your baby was
Showrunner, writer, executive producer,
right.
Director.
Yeah, you did 2 episodes,
Avid
right? Or
runner.
one. Okay. But Kevin Can Fuck Himself was a fantastic sitcom drama hybrid that I had the
You
pleasure
call
of
it
working.
fantastic, not me, but thank you.
But I had the pleasure of working on it for 2 years.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it was short,
Yeah.
2 years. But let's go into that a little bit. So,
Sure.
what was your elevator pitch to like get this off the like when you first had this idea and you were bringing it around to people, like what did you tell them?
Sure. Well, at the time, I was a showrunner's assistant. The first draft I wrote of it was the winter of 2017, or the summer of 2017. Again, a dark time. And the people I was like pitching it around to was my brother. Like, it was nobody was interested in what I had to say. Nobody wanted to read what I was writing. I mean, I was nobody. So I remember texting my brother and saying, I just had this weird idea. What if like there's a King of Queens kind of sitcom, and it's like a funny husband who's not very attractive and a super hot wife who just says things like, what do you mean? Like, has no jokes, and it just looks totally normal. And then she leaves and goes into the kitchen, and then you slam into like a single camera, Breaking Bad type show. Is that just a scene? Can that be a whole pilot? Can that be a whole script? And I was like, it sounds like someone must have done this before. Someone must have mashed up these two things. It's the only time I felt like that. Like, somebody must have done this before.
It's kind of very Wizard of Oz, like when they
Yes.
pull
Yeah.
the curtain back,
Yeah.
and you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, it's just a little guy back there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever.
And it was the most excited I've ever been about an idea I had. And I really loved writing that first pilot. And I say first pilot because it bears almost no resemblance to the show that came on the air. I reread it a little while ago, and I was like, oh, it was
Don't
funny
do that to
and weird
yourself.
in its own way. Yeah. Like, it's the show that didn't come to be. I mean, Allison was pregnant in the pilot. She and Patty were immediately friends. Like, it was very, very different. Although I did really like the multicam subplot where Kevin was in a feud with his garbage man. And so the garbage man...
That kind of made it in, too, a little bit, right?
With the neighbors.
Yeah.
But the garbage man kept piling garbage onto his lawn, and you would never see the garbage man. But they ended up having like a garbage throwing fight, and that's where he found the positive pregnancy test and found out she was pregnant.
Oh, okay.
So how is that
Wait,
process?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, because that sounds like a lot of hills you would die on, and you didn't.
How to go from the
Yeah.
the winter we don't talk about to
The dark
the
time.
summer of happiness.
So yeah, I wrote it for free, again, alone. I was just an assistant. I became writer's assistant on SEAL Team on CBS.
Nice.
I'm so grateful to that show, don't get me wrong.
Love CBS.
Love CBS.
NBC rival, though.
That's why she talks shit about NBC.
Yes, that's true. But you lose allegiance so fast when it comes to working on things.
Oh, you're paying me now. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Exactly.
Pepsi Cola, whichever pays me.
I was like, NBC, why do I care about them? Oh, right. I was a page. But I was writer's assistant on that. And it was a fabulous writer's assistant gig because 22 episodes, a room of, I think, 14 writers. And it was story math. Like, we weren't talking about deep emotional things. We weren't talking about character development or like, arcs or anything like that. It was all like, how do we do the equation of SEAL Team in this episode? How do you make it different?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And to pitch on something like that is so impersonal. Like, you don't have to worry about seeming not smart or like you don't understand character or story. It's really just like, well, what if the cell phone they find has a thumbprint thing to open it? That's the kind of stuff you're
It's a
pitching.
formula.
It's a formula.
Yeah.
So safe. And I felt very comfortable in that room pitching things like that. And they promoted me to being a staff writer. That was my first staff
Awesome.
writing job.
And that's like that price range where you come in and it's like $3,000 a week.
Changed my life.
Wow.
And you get into the guild
I got into the guild.
because it's over a certain amount of episodes.
It was anything over a 14-week contract.
Yeah.
14 weeks or above, I think, at the
Which
time.
is important to note because a lot of writers that, like, you know, they might get their break on a show that's 8 episodes, don't
That's not
get
that
into
long,
the
yeah.
guild.
They would, if because shows change have changed so much, you still work at least usually 20 weeks on an 8-episode show. You're
okay.
just producing
Oh.
so fewer episodes. That's why you only have 7 writers, not 14.
So as long as you're a writer for a certain amount of weeks,
Yes,
you can
and
get
they
into
they
the
promoted
guild.
me just for the back 9. Like I
Oh.
was only for the half
Yeah.
the season. So
Do you want to get into
it's
the
like-
guild right away, or is it because I know some people like don't want to get into the union because they can't get certain jobs? Like, do you?
Oh no, there are not many non-union writing jobs.
Oh, okay.
So you want to be in the guild so bad. The bummer is the initiation, but that's true with every guild.
Yeah.
You know.
I think it's like SAG a lot. Like, I think there's not, you know, if you want to be an actor, you want to be in SAG.
Right,
Like,
right,
if
right.
you're a
Well,
writer,
not
you
off the
wanna be
bat
in-
because as a SAG member, you can't do non-union work, and like you want to do non-union work if you don't have a good reel.
True.
Oh,
Right? Like if
okay.
you don't have
Yeah.
if you don't have like a lot of stuff that people can hire you, a lot of people that I know that jumped into union are doing like background work. And it pays more, but they're not getting that opportunity
Yeah.
to like do more work.
Yeah, I
and
guess the difference is I can write for free
That's what
and
I was
have it not be like for the
Yeah.
guild for
Right.
as long as I want.
Oh, that's
Because
awesome.
you keep saying writing for free, but like I feel like if you're trying to pitch your own idea, like of course you're writing for free. You're developing a whole concept.
You say of course, but like a lot of people just don't do it.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so but that means they're not trying to develop their own. Like you can't get paid for an idea that doesn't exist. Like you need to have an idea to pitch to somebody to get paid for it, right?
If you're a big enough deal, people come to you with ideas.
And they tell you to write it.
This is that's a
Oh,
different
oh,
like that's a
trying to be
different
a
kind of.
writer.
But yeah,
Yeah.
to get into it, it's like you have to write for free because
do.
like
Yeah.
so yeah.
I mean, the only other way is if you are on a show as a writer's assistant and they love you enough and find you valuable
And
enough.
they
Like
bring-
nobody asked to read anything I wrote before they promoted me on SEAL Team because I had made myself valuable enough to them in that room. They didn't worry about the script so much.
Okay.
So
because-
you're on SEAL team and you're writing your own script on the side
On the side, yes.
and you're showing it to your brother.
Showing it to my brother. I showed it. And then once you get promoted, people who are already in the guild, people who already have agents, they, at least in my case, were very kind and wanted to help me find an agent. So a bunch of my friends on that show they were like, send me whatever sample you have and I'll send it to my agent and see if they want to represent you. One responded. She was a manager. Her name is Brandy Rivers and she is still my manager and I love her. And I went into that meeting thinking, I worked for a management company. I worked for that management company that she is a part of. I cried every day. I was like, this is a victory lap. I'm not going to have a fucking manager. And then I came out of that meeting being like, I think I have a manager. She's so great though. And I needed the help. I needed somebody who was like willing to hold my hand through a lot of things. Anyways, that script, Kevin, was the one I sent to her. It got sent to someone at UTA, which was my like dream agency. That's where a bunch of women who I really love and respect were represented. They loved it. I got my 2 agents off of that script, and then they said, "We want to sell this." And I was like, "Really? You think we can?" Okay, sure.
What version of the script are you on at this point?
Still that like
So the
beta version that nobody has ever seen. And so that was just sort of like in the ether that they wanted to sell it, but we did not pitch it to anybody. I had nothing prepared. I was working on a mini room for AMC, and I was told that they wanted to meet me because I got hired by a former boss, and they were like, "Why is this chick from SEAL Team on our show? We should probably meet her just to make sure she's not an idiot." And I was supposed to meet with this one executive, Erica, and by the way, when you get an agent your first time around, like they send you on what's called the water bottle tour, where you just go and meet all these executives at different agencies, production companies, et cetera, and they give you water at every place. So they call it the water bottle tour. So I was doing like 5 meetings a week at the time. And a lot of people actually around the industry, people will still tell me they read Kevin because it was a fun script to read and people
Nice.
would send it around. About 2 hours before the meeting, I got a call and it was Brandy and she said, so you have your meeting with AMC later, right? And I was like, uh-huh. She said, so apparently they read Kevin last night and now the meeting is about buying it. And there are 4 more executives who are going to be in it. And she's like, do you have anything prepared for like a series? And I said, no, Brandy, I don't. Like, I have nothing prepared. I have no... She's like, great, have fun.
So these meetings that you were having before that, it wasn't about selling. It was about trying to get a different writing
meet
job.
And greets. It was like, if you ever have a job available, remember who I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chatting.
Yeah.
Like, I met some actually really good friends.
So at that point, it was more of a resume than actually like buy this.
Absolutely.
Okay. But before we continue, like at this point, like what are writers supposed to have when they go into these meetings? Like if it's not a meet and greet, like it's like you're pitching something. Is it like a lookbook? Are there certain components you want to have for your
I think
script?
it depends on who you are.
I think it depends on how you work, on what you're pitching.
Because sometimes you go in like with a pilot done, and sometimes you just go in with a pitch.
And I have kind of both right now. I have pilots that I've written that we'll send around. I have pitches. And it's like, is what you're pitching very visual? Is it atmospheric? Is it dialogue heavy? Is it like... Because if it's all about like the comedy within a scene, you're going to want to be a very good showman. You're going to want to be able to deliver those lines and make people laugh in the room. Because just to say like a funny concept of a scene isn't going to get across the tone of the show. But if it's atmospheric and visual, then yeah, maybe you have a deck that you've put together of like, this is the feel of the show. But for Kevin, all I had was a script and a blank fucking stare. And I remember the meeting, it was with 4 women and we were talking about like, they were like, have you thought about anything for season 2? I was like, season 2? I was thinking, maybe you could keep playing with form and, think about like another medium to bring in, like a public access, like that public access episode they did of Atlanta. And one of the executives goes, yeah, I was afraid you're going to say something like that. I was like, okay, I'll just kindly fuck off then. Nice to meet you. She and I are still friends, by the way. And 3 weeks later, I got a call that they wanted to buy it. And from there, at every stage, I just said, well, this is fun. It'll die here, but I'm going to have as much fun as possible with this stage of it. And
so this is still 2017.
That was 2018 by then.
Okay.
Sold it in 2018. I spent that summer writing a format document, like a Bible, for the show. And I just did it on my own, basically, because my deal hadn't closed. But I wasn't going to wait until my deal closed and give myself like 2 weeks to write it because I don't do that. So I worked on it all summer. It was the most fun I've ever had writing something.
Can you talk a little bit about, so you had a pilot, you had kind of an idea, but now you have to expand this world to a full season.
Yeah.
Can you talk about like little tips and tricks that like, how do I build this world?
Sure.
What kind of house do they live in?
Yes.
Like, how did you decide that kind of stuff?
And to add to that is like the Bible. What is the Bible, right? Because I don't think a lot of people know what that is.
So what I do, and I do a lot of this work before I write something because I feel like I want to know how people talk and why they talk that way. That's a very like great operating procedure for me.
So you chose Boston because it's a funny accent.
I chose Boston because I feel like they're my people and I know them from the bottom of my soul.
New York.
The whole like, it's only nice out because it hasn't started raining yet. Yeah. Like that is entirely where I grew up. So I felt, and I also felt like, I mean, it wasn't Boston, it was Worcester.
Yeah. And
that felt like a funny sitcom to me. But before I write a pilot, when I'm trying to figure out how people sound, I think about their background, what trauma they have, whatever, stuff like that. And also what I do is do you know the Proust questionnaire? They would ask it on inside the actor's studio to all of the actors. No, we're the only dorks who watched it. So James Lipton would ask it of all of the actors.
Painful.
That is painful. Yes.
It's painful.
I loved it, but it's the Proust questionnaire. It's like 19 questions, I think, and it's things like, what is your favorite noise? What is your least favorite noise? What what do you want St. Peter to say to you at the gates of heaven?
It's method. It's super method.
Whoa.
No, I mean,
Did
it's
they
just,
expect people to make this noise on the
it's
spot?
like what Daniel Day-Lewis goes through his head while he's thinking about it, what character he's going to be.
But, like,
It's a very
James
method
Lipton-
way of doing it.
James Lipton asks it of the actors, not of the character they're playing.
No, I know, but like as an actor,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a very method thing to do for a character.
Well, what I do is I answer
Yeah.
every question
Yeah.
as a character, as each character. And it
Okay.
brings up like really interesting little things that you wouldn't think about. Like, you know, one of the questions is, if you could do any job in the world, what would you do? If you could avoid any job in the world, what would it be? And answering questions like that as Kevin, as Allison, as Patty, it gave me answers that
Neil, come on, don't forget.
everybody.
Right.
It gave me answers that expanded the world and these people in my head. And actually, when I wrote the Bible for fun at the end of every character description, I put a few of those question and answers for the reader to look at because I thought it was a like fun detail. But essentially, all a Bible is an explanation of what the show is. Like as a whole, what are you trying to say? What is the show about? And then you kind of go into specifics from there. So like the characters, the pilot, the continuing series, continuing season, the continuing series, the tone, the like comps, the visual references, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think mine came out to be about 30 pages, something like that. And I had so much fun writing it.
Is there
It was
like a
great.
certain number of pages you should be having, or it just goes on the flow of whatever the story in the world you create, correct?
I think it's usually about 30 for what they call a format, which is a less intense Bible. I've never written a full Bible. I don't know why it would have been longer or who would have wanted to read it after 30 pages.
Which is a ton of work for something that is going to eventually could become completely irrelevant.
Oh yeah.
or not even be made.
You're talking about, you mentioned method actors. I'm wondering, it's like you're doing all of this as a writer. Like, could an actor come in, look at this, go, that's not what I'm going to do as the character, and then just completely fuck off everything you did and like make up their own version of the character?
Studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The studio.
yeah, everybody. Yeah.
I mean, yes, they could. I think when you're hiring an actor, you have enough meetings where you try to find like, okay, this is where I'm coming out with this character. This is the understanding. This is like how I write them, how I'm operating as I'm writing them. And then you get a lot of input and like you meet somewhere in the middle usually. And a lot of times you're auditioning people. So to have someone come in and say, that's not what I'm going to do. It's like, well, I see what they're going to do and I hire them because of it. We didn't offer like Allison to anyone.
Do you was your situation? Would you say that your situation was unique in the sense that you had that control? Like, or is that something that a lot of writers should expect? Like, you could have sold it, walked away, and then not had anything to do with it after it was sold, right?
I guess I could have. I don't know who wants to do that.
Yeah.
more for movies, I think.
Then more for movies.
Yeah.
Like the
Than
sort of
TV.
expectation is if you're writing TV, you are the creator is such a freaking lofty title, but
Right.
they are hiring you.
But that's why you also got the title producer, and then you were showrunner. Like you got to be more involved. Not more involved, but you were involved in every step of the process, not just the writing.
Right. And there is a version of how this can go where people in my position are, especially if they haven't produced before, just said, okay, thank you. You can be you can be a little bit involved. We're going to hand it over to a showrunner who knows what they're doing. And I was very lucky in that my showrunner, I interviewed a bunch of people and I knew Craig DiGregorio was the right person because he was so wonderful. And like in our first meeting, he said, I want to help you make your show.
Yeah. I mean, after doing Drawn Together, like what other sitcom is there that...
What?
I know him from the crazy cartoon. Do you not know Drawn Together?
I do.
Oh,
I don't think I knew that he did that. Sorry, Craig.
So, I remember.
And that might be where he also met his wife. Sorry, Abby.
It is. Which is why it was so funny to me. Like you talk about like we mentioned like meeting lifelong friends. It's like Drawn Together is not the show where I thought somebody would ever meet their wife.
Especially in animation. Yeah.
Well, there's this moment where you talk about finding your showrunner, but before you never finalized, right, your sale of the script, you were making this pitch deck, or I'm sorry, this Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's that process? Because I know a lot of times, just because you sell it doesn't mean it gets made. Sometimes
Correct.
it gets shelved.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
what happens after
what's
they
that-
said they want to buy
Right.
it?
Before you
Right.
get to the showrunner.
So they said, we want to buy it. Part of that is we're going to buy the pilot, which you've already written. Great.
Mhm.
And we want to format document a Bible.
Mhm.
So I handed it all in. My deal closed.
One season or 2 seasons?
The Bible was like kind of plan out season 1 and then give a
Preview.
preview of
Yeah.
series
Okay.
going forward. None of it remains. Everything I wrote. I mean, other than I think the tone of the show. I really understood how the show should feel, like how chaotic it should be, how it should still be fun and not dour and try not to be a bummer.
But I think that's a huge misconception in this business because I think so many people that want to get into this business, as any department head, are like, I'm the artist. I have the idea, but you sell your idea to a studio and it is now owned by them. So just like my costumes that I can't mass produce to make Halloween costumes because my designs are owned by a studio, now this script that's like, for a lot of writers, it's different for me as when I'm a costume designer because I'm not costuming someone to look like my mom.
Right.
But
Yeah.
potentially you wrote a character that is based off of your own mother and a studio wants you to re-break them.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's a little more intimate
Little
of a
more.
artist. Yeah. Like,
I mean, that's something I've really had to learn is
Yeah.
how to divorce myself from that emotional
Yeah,
attachment.
100%.
I think, it was my first show. It was like everybody was named after a relative of mine because I'm horribly uncreative. And it did feel so personal. And I wouldn't change anything. Like that is, you couldn't have, people tried to tell me not to do that. I still couldn't. Like you have to go through it. You have to be that attached to something. At least I did. To then know, oh, I'm not going to do that next time.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of distance, not like a complete emotional detachment. But I don't need to put everything of myself, my body, my soul into work,
Right.
into a show.
because I think the important thing to note too is the studio buys it. I mean, the ultimate goal is to make money.
That's right.
So
To
it's
sell
like,
soap.
it's not to make art
No.
anymore. Unfortunately, it is not. It is to make money, and you have to you have to come to some balance that it's personal and it's your style and it's your art, but it can also make
But-
this person that's paying your salary money.
That's right.
But when you sell it, is there a chance to go like, okay, I'm going to retain 10% of royalties?
I mean, I
or-
have some sort of back end to it, but okay, so say I sold the script to them and they didn't want to do anything with it. It's dead. I can't do it again unless
going to
they optioned it and then I would get it back and then could sell it. So at the time, so when the first call came in of like AMC wants to buy your script, I was like, that's incredible. And my agent said, I mean, it was my whole team that called me, which usually means you're fired, but I didn't have a job. So I was very confused. And my agent was like, yeah, well, AMC wants to option it
Mhm.
for, you want me to use real numbers?
If you're okay with it,
Whatever,
I'd
yeah.
love. Yeah,
Sure,
absolutely.
why not? Like, I feel like we just talk about it now, right?
Yeah.
And also keep in mind, I was, my level at the time was a staff writer. I don't think I had been a story editor yet, which is just like the next title up. I'd never produced before. This is like, if you just sell a pilot as a person off the street, you can expect this, which I think is helpful. So they wanted to option it, which means they get the rights to it to develop it for a certain amount of time. And if they don't like it, it goes back to me and I can sell it.
Oh, awesome.
But it shows a lack of commitment on their part to not just want to buy it outright.
Right.
So they were offering to option it for $30,000. And I was like, oh my God, that is incredible. And my agent goes, no, we're insulted. And I was like, yeah, okay, we're insulted. Great.
How long did they want to option it for?
I think something like 6 months.
6 months.
Mm-hmm. And so my agents countered, and I think they closed at $135,000 for a sale.
Wow.
So not an option anymore.
Not an option.
And
They bought it.
And if you didn't have an agent, you would have been stuck.
I would have been saying, thank you so much for quarter of the money.
Yeah.
I like that my brain goes to the idea of like, I'm going to option the same thing to 9 different places.
I mean, absolutely. They tried
Just
to
keep optioning it.
they tried to get a bidding war going.
Yeah.
Nobody else was interested.
Okay.
But so I sold it, paid off my student loans, paid off my car. Of course, after taxes and 20% to reps, it's not $135,000, but it was enough to pay off my fucking student loans.
That's why they
was
up it. Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And so I turned it in September, and I think I was told that I was going to get a mini room, which was the next step on the sort of path to making a show. I was told on Halloween. And all a mini room is instead of a pilot, they'll take that money that they would have spent on one episode and give you a writer's room. This is what we just fought to change, by the way, where we paid everybody very little money because it wasn't a real show yet, so they weren't producing. But then it became a real show, and guess what? We had a bunch of episodes. It got us a little mini room for like 3 months, and we were to come up with 3 more episodes. And that was its own very difficult process of...
Did they just assign you writers?
No. I met with 10 showrunners and went with Craig, thank God. And then the 2 of us staffed the room.
Okay.
I took somebody who I loved working with on Lodge 49, and he brought people he loved working with elsewhere. Like, we read a bunch of people, interviewed a bunch of people. And when it comes to staffing a room, I was so lucky that I had been a writer's assistant for so long because I knew room dynamic. Like, it is the job I wish for every up-and-coming writer, because there is no pressure to talk when you're a writer's assistant. There is no, like, huge chance of fucking up or, like, putting yourself out there and not being a good fit. You get to just have a very practical job and learn. It can be grad school. It's incredible. And I felt like I knew what I liked in a room. I cared way less about people's writing samples because I knew that Kevin was such a weird show that I would likely be doing a bunch of rewriting just because I could see it. I didn't know if anybody else could really see the show. It was non-existent yet, I wanted to be able to sit in a room with 5 people, have a good time, get work done, have the same sense of humor, sensibility. I didn't want people pitching body drops all over the place like that. It's not that show, but it's also not just like a hard comedy where there's no emotion, where we sacrifice character just for a punchline. It was a hard balance, but I think I found that it was easier to find comedy writers who could transition to drama than find dramatic people who could be funny.
I think having a timing and humor is tough.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody would be a stand-up comic if that was true.
Did you try to find people that had sitcom experience, though?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. On season 1 and 2, we hired Sean Clements, who had just done multicam. And
Can we talk about, because I don't know how many people listen to this podcast that actually know the difference of what we're talking about, like
multicam or drama or
sitcom versus drama,
single cam,
and like why there's a differentiation, because it's a huge difference for every department head. And like, I can't get hired as a costume designer. Have you done multicam before? Like, it's a huge thing about hiring department heads. So I don't know. Who wants to tell us the difference?
I think that was the first sitcom the first one I ever worked on. I'm not sure if there was ever one done in Massachusetts before either. So it's like any of the lighting people or anything like that. They were like,
a lot of guys came from New York who had done, of all shows, Kevin Can Wait.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I remember one of the camera operators that he wore that. He purposely wore that jacket every single day.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yep. So we had some people. We had a multicam sort of overseer who had done it, and we figured out the right people to have on set to make it look right. But basically, the difference between a multicam and a single cam comedy, always what I tell my parents is there a laugh track? It's multicam, with one weird exception of Aaron Sorkin's Sports Night.
That multicam is equal to sitcom.
Yeah.
When we say sitcom, it's multicam, and when we say multicam, it's sitcom. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I mean, for the purposes of this discussion, you can have a single camera sitcom. Absolutely. Something like
difference
Scrubs.
too, from my perspective, is the perspective.
Yeah.
Is you only shoot
You are the
one
fourth
direction.
wall. Yeah.
Yes.
That's why it's you
Yes.
call it the fourth wall. Like,
Exactly.
That's-
it's
so
that wall is gone in the building and you never see it really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I think enough people have seen like at the end of sitcoms when like, it's the final episode, they pull out
Yeah.
from the sitcom and it's literally all the cameras face the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important to note because as a camera department, as a costume department, as a set designer, it is extremely different to design for multicam rather than a single camera drama. And you don't go out on location. It's all on the stage. Like it's a different show. It's more like it's almost, I always say it's closer
Theater.
to a regular job
yeah.
than
yeah,
like a,
that's
than
true.
a film job.
And from our side, like I remember I've never been on a scene, like on a set where my boss, every single, like after we did the blocking, he would walk through the set every single time, stand here. Yep, I'm getting hit by 3 lights. Stand in the next spot. Yep, I'm getting hit. Like he would walk through and just make sure that like all the light, it's a very even. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
It's
not
designed so
Yeah.
it
But it's
can
dynamic.
almost go as almost run as a play.
Yeah.
So that you're capturing everybody at all times so that in one take you can cut to every character that you need.
Well,
Everyone is lit all the time.
The,
And
the
you
f-
just-
first day, like I remember, like we're rolling, and they did the entire scene.
Yeah.
It was very much more like theater.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then we're like, oh, did we just shoot the whole day?
I
and
mean,
We just shot the
I
whole
was
day.
gonna
You
say,
can
and
shoot
then,
so
like-
many more scenes on
Yeah.
multi than you can on
Very-
drama.
that
Yeah.
was
You
cool.
decide then to take on both demons. You decided to do both.
Oh, so then let's talk
how
about
many times Craig and I said, next time let's make one show,
Yeah.
not 2.
But it was-
and then I signed
yeah,
up to write
it-
2
it-
shows on
it-
this next thing.
It was interesting because we didn't do them on the same days. We had like there were 2 multicam days an episode and 6 or 7 single cam days an episode. That's
So
and that's
talk
just-
about
yeah.
then talk about like how
Okay.
it differentiates. So then
the whole idea of the show to me, like the whole reason I was interested, the reason I thought it had legs and other people might want to see it, is that idea of like, the sitcom living room. We've all seen Roseanne or All in the Family or that 70s show. Like, what it looks like without even knowing what it looks like.
Uh-huh.
But like, what does that living room, what does the Roseanne living room look like in a single camera world? Like, how would it be so depressing? Would it be really dingy and like that blanket is probably stained, but from this far away with all those lights, with the laughter, you don't notice that stuff.
and why can you see that? Like I know the answer to this, but like explain why you can see that in single cam.
In
You
single
can't
cam.
see it in multicam.
Because you can do things like close-ups. Things are lit differently so that you actually see like the grit or grime that we made. I mean, not everything was actually the same between single cam and multicam. Sometimes we would change a sweater to like have a hole in it that was visible in the single cam that we wouldn't in the multi. But the idea is that it was always there. You just never noticed it.
it's interesting too. Like the walls when they close the set actually like the 2 outer walls get closed in, so it feels smaller.
It was incredible.
yeah.
I
It's a
mean,
really
so when
cool-
you're shooting on multicam, you bow out the walls so that it kind of, it looks like a play. It looks like a stage.
Yeah.
And when you shoot in single cam, it looks like a normal room. So we would have to have a day where they would convert the set when we were off, usually on location. And they would put the walls in and add the 4th wall. I remember the first time I walked onto stage as a multicam, I was like, oh my God, it's a multicam. It's real. This is exactly what I wanted it to be. The horrid floral couch and the wallpaper and the Pottery Barn coffee table. It was perfect. And then the first time I walked in, because you actually have to walk through the door, not just like up to the set when it's single cam, I opened the door and was like, oh my God, this is every living room I was in as a kid. It smells like pasta sauce. Like it was the same place. It was like, oh my God, I can see it. Oh, maybe this will work. Maybe the show actually makes sense. I was so afraid. I like, if any show should have had a pilot, it's this one. But we were just greenlit to series. And I remember just praying that first transition would make sense from, going to that brightly lit laughter in the audience, like big sitcom, to this quiet little scene with a woman who's like on the edge of breaking down. And what actually made it make sense, because for a little while when we first stitched them together, she's in the living room, they're playing beer pong. Kevin and his friends are being total assholes. You're not even really looking at her. She goes off camera through the swinging door into the kitchen. And suddenly Annie is staring at the camera. She looks like ready to fucking like lose it. And she does. She like smashes a glass on her counter and then says, "I'm fine." And nobody even cares. Nobody asked. And when we first stitched it together, it was like, oh, it's close, but it feels like that other part was in her head. It feels like a dream sequence. Like, what the fuck? What do we do? And what actually made them completely meld and do what I wanted it to do was by keeping the audio of Kevin and all of them playing beer pong in the single camera. It made, like, they were off having fun in that multicam world all by themselves, and she could just hear it, and so could we. And it made those two worlds of, like, the same. I never would have guessed that it would have been sound that
and
kept
like
them
you
together.
can't write. I mean, you worked in the room for how long before you got on set, and like you wouldn't have been able to write that had you
No,
not
I had no
been
idea.
on set.
I remember we did different takes too, where when that door swung open, the lights were bright in there and it was dark in the kitchen. And then we did one where it was dark in both rooms. So it's like, what world is she in? Where did she walk from? That kind of. So it's like there were multiple. It took a lot of different things to try to find
to figure out the rules. Like I knew that we could never see the rule for the room, the writer's room, was if you see Kevin, Neil, or Pete on camera, we called them multicam catalysts. They got to live in a multicam. They were that lucky. They were white dudes in Worcester, white Irish dudes in Worcester. They got to live in a world where they had very few consequences, where other people cleaned up after them. Everything they did was funny. They got the benefit of the doubt. So they got to live in this little sitcom. And every episode, I don't know why we chose to do this to ourselves, the sitcom had to be its own little episode of a sitcom, of Kevin's whatever, Kevin can wait. And while we did that, we also had to have a full episode of a single camera show that weaved in and out of the multicam. It was very hard.
This is all stuff you decided on in the mini writer room you guys were in.
Yep. And so we knew that if any of those men were on camera, it had to be the sitcom, and therefore that sitcom scene had to speak to the sitcom episode. You couldn't just throw in a scene of Kevin to help the single camera storyline. It had to actually, it was so hard. It was so hard. But
very different from your experience too. Like the room that you were in that you said sort of changed you with SEAL Team, and that was a formula.
Oh yeah.
That was not like figuring out all the rules. That was like plug and chug the crime, the, red herring, so I think it's interesting that like you self-proclaimed rule follower.
Yeah.
Not only sold a show in a very strange way, but wrote a show that didn't have any rules set out for it.
Yeah.
I had to make them up.
Yeah.
And once we figured them out, I felt like I was, not that I was writing SEAL Team again, but it gives you constraints, which feels very safe to me. I couldn't have told you, I was like, I wonder if you can see Kevin's shadow, like his silhouette when they're outside. If he's in the living room and you see his silhouette, is that going to feel funny? If we hear him off camera and it's single camera, is that going to feel funny? Like we wondered.
There were phone calls.
There were phone calls, but when you would intercut, I would go to him and he'd be in multicam. And then when you cut back to her, she was in single cam. But what I didn't do was go back and forth a lot.
Right.
So she picks up the phone. She says, yeah, okay, please stop saying meats. And then you cut to him screaming meats in multicam. He has a whole scene about trying to hire a Tom Brady lookalike for the party. And at the end of the phone call, you cut back to her in single camera being so fucking annoyed.
See, this is an interesting point when I think about like being in a Bert's losing. I love it.
This is why we work, Bert. Thank you.
But you're in this writer's room. You've been in it in different stages of your career, right? So being an assistant, being a writer, and then a staff writer, and then being a showrunner. These are like completely different views you have in different rooms. Like, what is the dynamic of a room, right? Like, because we talk about it a little bit so far, like getting in a room and like being in there and helping the show progress. But like, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? What does that look like?
Oh, and can we talk about, like, you said, I was an assistant and I got bumped up to staff writer, but I wasn't a story editor or an executive producer. So can you talk about like those differences
the
in a room?
dynamic of the room and the differences of it. Yeah.
So I can speak definitely to a drama room. Comedy rooms, very different.
Okay.
Comedy rooms terrify me because they can, I mean, traditionally, I think things have really changed, but traditionally, very mean, very cutting. If you're not, like, to have being funny be your job sounds like a total just nightmare to me. You know, I love a drama room because you can talk about character and story and
We're
ideas.
pitching ideas, not jokes. So it's
Exactly.
like, it's a little bit
And if
different.
someone is funny, it's a bonus. It's
Totally.
great. It's not
Yeah.
your job. So I'll speak to a drama room. By the way, I'm sure like The Bear, which is a comedy, is probably run like a drama.
Yeah.
We ran Kevin like a drama for the most part. But so you have your writer's assistant who's taking notes. Depending on the episode order, you might have anywhere from like 5 to, I think I was the 16th writer on SEAL team.
Wow.
A lot of writers, but it's 22 episodes. So you're always having this cycle of like, you break an episode together, meaning you all come up with the plot. You'll have your showrunner or the head writer who says, okay, let's talk about, we're done with 101. Let's go to 102 episode, the second episode, which is really where the show kind of any show starts. 102 is so hard to figure out traditionally. It took us a very long time on Kevin. But you have the showrunner kind of say like, okay, this is what we want to achieve in this episode. Let's just throw out some blue sky ideas of what could happen. And we might look to the board and say, okay, we have all these multicam ideas that we just kind of figured out on day one, just very traditional lines. You know, the boss is coming over for dinner. Kevin gets in a feud with the garbage man. And then you find a way to make it new once you're in it. But we had a wall of those sorts of ideas. And it's like, okay, what if Kevin gets in a feud with the neighbors as Allison has decided that she's going to kill him and she's going to start her rebellion. She's going to try to get drugs. That's what episode 2 was. She's going to try to get OxyContin and goes to different places to
Very
try to do
normal.
that. Oh, yeah. And so you all start talking. You come up with like the basic outline of the episode. Then you go in and talk about scene by scene what happens, all of you together. And on our show, I think we had maybe 7 writers. And you get to a place where the writer of the episode, the person who is going to go off and actually physically like write that episode, can get up in front of everybody, stand next to the board. I had a board of every scene is on a like 3x5 white card. And I also am crazy and I color code all the characters so that you can look at an episode and be like, you know, Kevin's looking a little light. I don't see a lot of orange. Maybe a little ridiculous.
Rebecca's like, fuck this.
I know. I know.
Yeah,
Just
it's like
wait.
note
Just wait
cards.
until we're in a room together and there's note carding day where I just spend like all day long writing in different colors and like will tear up a card if I
I'll
do
be
it
like,
wrong.
yeah, I wrote the scene already.
Yeah,
Can we
I
just
know.
throw the note cards away?
Yeah. Never tell me that.
103? Are we ready for 103?
Yeah. So you have the writer who is able to stand up there and kind of repeat the episode back to everybody. And that's where you find out if it flows, if it makes sense, if they have any questions. From there, they go off, they write the outline. And they'll give it to me. And Craig will futz with it. We'll maybe give them notes and then they can try again. And eventually we give that outline to the network. Once the outline's approved, then the writer goes to script. Takes 2 weeks away from the room, writes the script, sends it, and then it's the same process again. Sends it to me and Craig. We have notes. Maybe they try again. Maybe we just take it if it's very good and pretty close. Then a lot of times I'd be like, great, I'm just gonna make this sound like the characters in a different way, whatever.
And when they go away for their 2 weeks, the next day in the room when they're gone, your guys are
Let's
breaking
go to
the
103.
103 episode.
Oh, that's
yes.
what I was going to
Yeah.
ask. Is it a linear process or is it like
Yeah, so
different
the whole
writers are
room doesn't
assigned?
take 2 weeks off. It's
Okay,
just
that's what I
that
was gonna say.
one writer
That's why you will
leaves.
have 16 writers on a 22
That's
episode show.
And
That's
they're
so that
each assigned
people go off.
They're each assigned an episode.
Yes, and so people go off, but you still have a group of writers working on the next one.
And if
by the time
first
one
guy-
comes
yeah.
back, another one's off.
But don't you need aren't there components of it that have to keep the story flowing? Is that why the outline's approved first
Yes.
before they do that? So
Yes.
that they know all the key points of what the character building is and
Yes.
the process of this
And
season?
sometimes like I'll be off on script for like a show that's not mine. And I'll get an email from the showrunner being like, hey, we're going to do this in the next episode. So can you seed that into your episode? Like we've been talking about this in the room.
I feel like
so
there's always like as formulaic as some of those shows are, there's always that one weird little arcing story. Like this one character has 6 episodes where they're addicted to Oxy.
sure.
And it's like that's got to
'Cause
be an
most-
arcing thing that like
Yeah.
plays no attention to anything,
That's
but
correct.
like it's in there.
Yeah.
Because like a big difference between network shows and streaming, or as we used to call them, cable shows, are that network shows generally want you to write like a fairly standalone episode. Like you can tune into a network television show and you can watch that one episode of TV. And like, yes, there might be a little B storyline that you don't get, but generally you can watch the episode and enjoy it.
Like a case of the week.
Exactly. So
Wraps
like
up in one episode.
that's why SEAL Team is like, oh, more formulaic than say Kevin, that you need to watch 102 to know what's happening in 103.
Yeah.
And it's a very different
Where we went wrong.
process for a writing room. Yeah. Exactly.
It is a very different,
Yeah.
like,
But it's also like because they're going to play that at 1 p.m. on a Monday in 3 years when they have nothing else to put
exactly.
in. AMC's not doing that with
No, they are not.
So it's like there is a reason why they are written that way. It's
Absolutely.
it's so they can syndicate it and like put it out
Absolutely.
whenever they
And
need to.
yes.
Or, you know.
Yes. So in the writer's room, also, you have, I mentioned sort of levels. You start as staff writer. The next level up is story editor, executive story editor. Then you get into like co-producer, producer. I don't know. They're a producer. Anyways, none of it means shit. Basically, if you're helpful, they will find a way to keep you around.
Mhm.
If you are a staff writer who can rewrite and give your showrunner a ready script, you could be rewriting a co-executive producer. Like your title is based on experience, and experience does not always correlate to helpfulness on a show.
Also based on money.
Well, the money you get is correlated to the title, which is correlated
That's
to
what
experience.
I mean.
Yes.
Like the titles, you get paid. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you could be editing somebody's script that gets paid 3 times as much
That's
as
correct.
you.
Absolutely.
So
Really?
there's
yeah.
not as much of a hierarchy in a writer's room as there is on a film set.
Oh, it's more
There
collective.
definitely
Yes.
can be, but it's like, yeah, I think it sort of
Like a PA
shakes
can't,
itself
yeah,
out.
a PA can't tell me what T-shirt to put an actor in.
No.
Like like really no one but myself can say this is the costume I'm putting
Yeah.
on an actor. But you can contribute if you're in a nice room as a staff writer to an executive producer script.
Yeah, that's great because it really doesn't matter the experience you had on previous shows. It matters like what you're bringing to this show.
I don't know, Bert, if that's true. Like, can all electrics,
When I was day playing in
like,
New
can you
York,
touch all the equipment if you're...
when I was day playing in New York, I wouldn't say shit. Like
Exactly.
my job was to stand in staging. If they called for something, I would walk it towards set, and the person that was in the pocket would take it from me and actually do the work.
Yeah, there's
Like
certain...
there were days that I worked where I don't even think the key grip knew that I existed, and it's like it didn't matter because I was on a different TV show the next day.
And it's like
Now-
only the gaffer can talk
Yeah.
to the DP, and then only the DP can talk to the director.
Well, and
like,
that also depends on the dynamic of your crew. I have a very nice boss who, like, there are times, and especially the last few years, like we're doing things like rolling lunches and stuffing. Like, the gaffer can't step away. No, they have to fucking eat. So it's like my boss is nice enough that it's like when he will go eat, or they make him go eat, or something like that. One of us is we are capable of standing in for him, talking with the DP. Like Adrian has 90 songs for every single person on our crew. Like when it was their turn to stand in, like things like that. Like we all have a relationship.
But
so
when you're standing in, are you going to pitch a lighting idea?
no, I'm
That's the difference.
I'm keeping
Yeah,
a
you're just
consistent.
quiet. Yeah.
Yes, but with the right boss, like a room, like I can always go to Jesse and say like, hey, why are we doing it this way?
100%.
Wouldn't it be cool if like why don't we try this? And like sometimes like he'll forget about a light in our package, and we're like, oh, we just set those up, we just charged those, like these would be perfect for that. And he's like, oh yeah, thank you for reminding me. So there, like, you do have this certain, but I would never do that as a day player.
Yeah.
They would be
I
like,
think-
who the fuck are you? Like that there's
Yeah.
there's the difference.
And I think,
By the way,
like,
there are
when
rooms who would say, "Who the fuck are you?"
Yes.
to a writer's
for sure,
assistant.
and that probably
100%.
has to do with your title as well. Like that's like
a little bit. I think
but not a staff writer. Like, as long as you're staffed up to executive producer, like I think it's more of what people think is going to happen on a film set. Like, I think, we all get on a film set and we're like, we're making this film together. And it's not true at all. Like, we are absolutely not. I think in a writer's room, you are writing it together.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a really nice, wonderful thing to like have in this kind of world that like a lot of the artistry has started to get taken away. And I think it's like really nice that like you're, not in every room you can do this, but like you do kind of create this story together.
It is truly collaborative.
Yeah.
Like I could not have come up with half of this show, like more than half on my own. I would have been screwed. I remember, towards the end of season 1 in the room, by the time you're breaking, which, means figuring out the episode, breaking the plot. By the time you're breaking the finale, someone in my position has 2 outlines to read, 2 scripts to rewrite, another script to write entirely. Like, you are in your office writing alone for most of the day. You don't have a lot of time to sit in the room and break story with your writers, so you better trust them. And I remember I was like grinding away on 104, the script. And I went into the room because they were like, we have a pitch. We have a pitch for the problem of the day was, how is Neil going to overhear that Allison was trying to kill Kevin? And we knew actually we were going to kill Neil in that episode. He was going to hear that Allison was trying to kill Kevin, and Patty was going to come in and save her and kill her own brother. And then Alex Bonifer was so incredible playing Neil that we kept him alive.
Good.
So that was the problem of the day. They were like, we have something to pitch you. So I walk into the room, and Sean Clements, who's incredible, stood up and was like, okay, Kevin and Neil, we're going to write in a few different episodes that they have a long-running game of hide and seek. That they have like marathon hide and seek sessions. And we're going to sprinkle it in a couple episodes because none of them had been shot yet, so we could. And in this episode, to get rid of Neil, Kevin's going to say, okay, go hide. And Neil, you forget, but Neil goes off and does. And so at the end of the episode, he's hiding in Allison's kitchen and overhears an argument between Allison and Patty and hears that she tried to kill Kevin. And that he comes out, like bursts out of a cabinet in multicam, and it's very funny. And Alex is so good at physical comedy that like he, you can imagine him.
It was
like
a small closet.
It was a small closet. And I was like, oh my God, that's it.
Yeah.
I could see it. It was like just a deep sense of relief. And I couldn't have done that alone.
Yeah.
Like, give me all the time in the world, like alone in a room, and I won't come up with that. So it is like a wonderfully, like inherently collaborative thing, unless you're working for some tyrant, but I haven't.
Do you get like, is there credit given to these writers? Like, because I don't know how the credit system, like if if you're working in a department, like, and you figure out that they need something and you give it to them, or like your higher up gives it to them, they may get the credit for it. Is that something that a writer would get credit for? Like that they helps them like expand in their career and grow in their career? Or is it like the showrunner always gets credit for something like that?
I think it kind of goes both ways. So that is the job, is to come up with story and pitch it, So I don't think that there's like a physical credit that goes along necessarily with coming up with a very helpful thing in a room like that. But at least on Kevin, and I plan on doing this any other time I'm lucky enough to have a show, on a lot of shows, so you assign scripts, right? And people go off and write them. And it comes back to me. And it's my job to make sure it sounds like the show, that it makes sense, that it is shootable, that it answers the network notes, the actors' notes, whatever. Like, that is all on me. And so often, especially on Kevin, which was such a weird show, I ended up doing like a lot of rewriting. So a lot of times by the end, it was entirely stuff that I had written on the page. But the writer, their ideas that were there helped me so much. Like it was as if I had been working on it already for 2 weeks when I get
overarching.
But words-wise, page-wise, I did write all of it, but I didn't get there on my own. A lot of people in my position, not a lot, assholes in my position will put their name on the script saying, well, I rewrote it. And it's like, yeah, but that's the fucking job, man.
I feel like I have gotten some scripts. So I feel like when I get that, there's usually, it's like 102 written by, and it's like at least one name. I'm assuming that's the person that went off and wrote it for 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And then there's usually a sub name or something. I'm assuming that's
so
the showrunner.
if it says written by,
Yeah.
it would usually say my name and then teleplay, or story by.
Okay.
And then the person who
Which
was
are two
actually
different
cast with
credits, like that on IMDb and
Money-wise.
everything. That's way, yeah.
Money wise, it's very different. Residual wise, I'm like, or if it's written by, if I just add my name, me and Rebecca,
Mhm.
because I rewrote Rebecca's script, I'm taking half of her episode fee, taking half of her residuals.
Oh.
So it's interesting. It's not like there's money per episode and that gets distributed. It's not you get this much and you get this much and this person gets this. It's basically like there's this much money. It
That's
gets
correct.
divided because of this.
That's correct.
Everybody negotiate, like,
Yeah.
everybody gets paid like a different amount, like
Mhm.
just like
Well,
in
weekly.
departments. Yeah, weekly.
But
So,
for an episode fee, it's all the same
yes, if you're not splitting it.
if you're not splitting it.
This is unveiling curtains that I've never seen before and never
Oh,
heard of. And I'm
I'm
like,
so glad.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the running joke on set is always like, what do producers do?
yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough, because the job can mean a billion different things. It can mean that you got in early and saw a good idea and saw it through and end up being on set and don't do anything, or like have a few ideas but don't actually like move the needle in terms of helpfulness.
Yeah.
That is how I think about my job when I'm a staff writer, when I'm a showrunner, whatever, is like, how do we row the boat together? And I understand too, like I came at Kevin thinking this is a team sport. I grew up like playing soccer and volleyball and thinking we're all in this together to make the best thing possible. No, that's not true. That's not true. Everybody has not only like their own best interests at heart, which is absolutely fine because we're all doing our own careers.
Yes.
Nobody should care about the show the way I care about the show.
Mhm.
Of course they don't. That's fine. Also, some people are there because it's their fucking job and they want to work.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it. And they want to go home.
The way you're talking about the writer's room, it feels very below the liney. Like it's like you go in there and like you're all pitching and you're working together. It's like that's how I feel about like the electric department. But
Yeah.
The dynamic.
then you're also a producer, which is very above the liney.
yeah.
Yeah, very.
When you're in the writer's room at this point, what does that dynamic mean? When do you get more money for writing an episode versus just being in the room?
So
like,
flat fee for, I think it changes with every year. It's built into the contract we just worked so hard for, the minimum that you get for an episode. And everybody will get that episode fee for like a 60-minute cable drama. There's a certain amount that you get. I don't remember
the actual amount.
the actual amount. I think for Kevin, because it was on AMC, which pays you less than, say, NBC. NBC, I think, paid $42,000 an episode just to write it. I think for AMC it was about $33
Is this on top of the
weekly.
$3,300 a week? You get it.
So yeah, you start staff
Wow.
writing,
Yeah.
I think around $3,300 a week, and then if you get an episode that is and we just got episode fees for staff writers. Forever, staff writers would be assigned an episode; they wouldn't get an episode fee. That was just the way it worked.
What?
I think it was billed to showrunners as like you get to save money on a staff writer, so it's an incentive to bring people up. But it's like $40,000 at the end of the day in your budget is not that much, but it means a ton to a staff writer.
To one person.
What's the difference between can you negotiate an episode fee if you're an executive producer?
No.
Like you don't get more.
Mm-mm.
So
Not
how
that I've
do-
ever seen.
So their weekly is more, but their episode fee isn't more.
Yes.
And then
And
what
once
about
you're a
the
producer, you get
residuals?
back end,
Yeah.
you get residuals. I still have no earthly idea how residuals work. I've tried to see like when residual checks are coming, but sometimes like you just get a green envelope in the mail. And sometimes it is for $1.18 for the episode of SEAL Team I wrote in 2018 that just like played somewhere, in Yugoslavia. And then sometimes it will pay my mortgage. And it's just like, ooh, what's this one going to be? Like
Mystery box.
mystery box. And by the way, like that half of one episode of SEAL Team has probably paid me more in residuals than I think Kevin might have just surpassed it. And I created that show and wrote 4 episodes of it and directed an episode of it. And
It's
like
because of the network.
it's because of the network.
Because of the network.
It's because it's
yeah.
SEAL Team. It's on CBS. It is in its last season. It is still on the air. So like they are still playing it somewhere in a casino,
Right.
in the middle of the country.
And
SEAL
that's
team is
the
on
other
it too.
difference is network shows can get syndicated.
That's right.
And
Yes.
streaming shows cannot. So there's a huge payout when syndication happens that if you are a producer, you then get like, let's say the show was syndicated for $130 million. If you have a residual share in the show, you not only get your weekly fee plus any episode fee plus residuals from the episode you wrote, you will get a check when the show gets syndicated.
And this is why like the business is changing so much because that is now
Gone away.
6 shows
Yeah.
like this year maybe.
People
Almost
would rely
no
on that.
shows
Yeah.
get syndicated anymore. Almost no shows get to 100 episodes because they do 13 a year and maybe go 4 seasons.
Yeah, but
And
did they
as
also
a-
change it? Like I know Disney would like Sweet Life of Cody would get changed to like Sweet Life of Cody on Deck, and because it's a whole new show,
Right.
they technically it's not the same show anymore,
Sure.
and it starts over.
Probably.
True,
Yeah.
but
they-
Disney
they
isn't
do- they do do that.
syndicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Also, why do you
streaming
know that
service.
about that show?
Well, no,
like,
because that's a big thing that like Disney actors have started coming out and speaking
Really?
out about
Yeah.
this stuff recently. But they do it all. I worked on The Good Wife, and then that turned into The Good Fight, and it's like then Blacklist and Blacklist Redemption. Like
Yeah.
And
these
it
are all
starts over.
those are new shows.
Well-
so it's like every season you get a 3% pay increase, or for the crew at least. I don't know but and then when Redemption happens, now it's a new show, so you go back down to the base rate.
Yeah,
and
you
so
never
it's
get
like,
to 100.
That's
Yeah.
mostly due to the actors why they do
That's
that.
fine. I mean,
yeah, not as
whatever
much
reason
for
they
the
do.
writers, but
Yeah.
because the actors when they sign on have to sign a certain, like some people for network it's 7 years. So if you are an actor and you sign up to do a pilot for a network show, at that fruition you have to commit to 7 years, which is
Oh.
hard because your life can change so much in 7
Yeah.
years.
And
but
there's-
you're
I mean,
That's why you have so
I-
many
there's-
actors who are so like pissed to still be on a show that they want to get out of, but they can't. They signed on.
Please
for
kill me
years.
off.
I mean, 7 years is just an incredible amount. I think about where I was 7 years ago, and I was unemployed. I was not a writer.
I feel like there's a lot of things that like just weird little end game residual things too. Like a lot of time you'll see, why did this person only direct or DP the pilot? And it's
Ugh.
like, it's like,
Well, that's
there-
a money
exactly.
train.
There's a residual
yeah.
thing where like, if you're the director on the pilot and it gets picked up for whatever, now you're getting residuals for the rest of the show that you weren't even part of.
Yep.
So it's like, you'll see things like, why did, I'm just going to say Scorsese on Vinyl. There's a reason he directed the pilot and nothing else. Like they spent more money on that because it had to get picked up because money had to go back towards him. So there is this game that a lot of people I don't think realize.
Oh, yeah, no way.
Why did that one look so different? There's a fucking
Yeah.
reason.
But when you talk about being the writer and you're creating the show, you're not necessarily becoming the showrunner. You're not necessarily writing some of these episodes. Like, how does that dynamic play, right? Or is it like, oh, I wrote this show and I determined in my contract I'm going to write 4 episodes.
I think it is dependent on the network that you're working with, your team, like who you have, and if they believe in you or not. I think I had a bunch of people who, for whatever reason, believed in me and wanted me to be involved. If they thought I was going to fly off the handle or lose the money, they would have put Craig just in charge. And instead, everybody was cool. And I really appreciate everybody letting me take an active role in everything. But like I said, there's a version of Kevin where I would have just stood on the sidelines and watched it happen and watched it air and been like, that's what they did with it. Okay. I got really lucky. When you're writing something, of course, you're always thinking about the end product, what it's going to be like when it comes out, what people will think, what reviewers will think, if you'll be proud of it. But I found I couldn't make any decisions based on that. Creative, work-wise, whatever. I had to base decisions on my own taste because it's the only thing I can control. It was theoretically what I was hired to do. And whether or not we're all having a good time at the end of the day. Because what else is there? Like, I just don't think that great reviews are worth a horrible work environment. I really don't.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they're mutually or that one leads to the other. I think you can have a great time making a show and be good to each other, realize we're at work, still do our work, but be good to one another and end up with a great product. I don't think, I don't buy into the you have to be an asshole to be a genius thing.
Yeah.
I also don't think it takes a genius to make a show. Like I really obviously was concerned about how it would be received. But if I was waiting until good reviews came in to be proud of it or to have a good time, man, I would be shit out of luck. I mean, We got some great reviews, but I read them and didn't feel fulfilled. I read them and was like, oh, season 2. Like, it's just a renewed anxiety. So my goal was always to have a good time getting there, to be proud of the product. You don't have a wrap party when the reviews come out. You have a wrap party because you're done with production and you all did it together.
I think we had like 3 wrap parties this season.
We sure did. And what also I think was hugely important was that it was during COVID.
Yeah.
None of us had worked. We were all just so happy to be around people, anybody. I was alone in an apartment most of the time in a town where I didn't know anybody else. I think it made us all really close, really fast, in a great way, in a way that was confusing. Like I said, I've since learned to give less of myself to a job. But when you're not allowed to have a life.
Right.
You know, I'm trying to go a little bit easier on myself, knowing that I don't know what I would have done differently.
That was like going to work was our social life, which is a weird thing to say, but it's like nobody was going out to a bar because bars weren't open. You know,
and if you heard about someone going out to a bar, they were in trouble.
Oh, our trackers were hilarious. We had these little like Bluetooth trackers that we had to wear on our IDs.
Yeah.
No, the first season we had 2 different kinds of trackers, and I remember season 1 it was. I think it was our executive producer and our UPM. Their offices were within 6 feet of each other.
Oh my God, that's right. But there was a wall.
There was a concrete wall between them. But their trackers always like went off when they collected the data. They're like, if one of you pops, you're both fucked. It's like, no, we're sitting in different rooms, but like it was talking to each other through. It was just this funny kind of thing.
So at this point in your time, when you're doing Kevin, your first time showrunner. Middle of COVID.
I should also say co-showrunner. Like I had Craig next to me showing me how to do things, hearing me cry all the time.
You're co-show running this the show, but you know there's a difference when you're writing this at home. Right? For like as much time as you want to take to formulate this idea in the show and put the world together versus being on set.
Oh yeah.
Right. So how does that dynamic work for you? What's those moments like?
Yeah, there suddenly becomes a lot of cooks in your kitchen. Where you were just making your soup by yourself there for months, and all of a sudden there's 50 people throwing ingredients in.
But when we end this?
Yeah. Well, the really funny thing is, I don't know that everybody thinks they could light a show. But everyone thinks they are a writer. I'll tell you that.
Or a costumer.
Goddamn costume
Everybody
designer.
thinks they're a costume designer too.
Well, that's true.
Everybody can write a great script and pick out a great outfit.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've read books.
And here's the thing I understand, because like you said, you get a production draft and you just assume this is like draft number 2. You don't know the arguments, the discussions, the network notes, the production like issues that have led to the words on the page. I felt like by the time we got to set, I knew why every line was there. It all served a purpose. So to change stuff, I had a hard time a lot of times, and I hope I got better at it.
What version of the script were you on at this point?
It depends. If it was, do you mean like the pilot?
Yeah, just from where you originated to where. I recently
looked, so I am shocking.
Double salmon.
I am anally like retentive about my organization on my computer. So I have a pilot drafts folder. It is so long. I also keep something called a graveyard, where when I delete something from a script, I will put it into what I call like the Kevin pilot graveyard. So that if I ever am like, oh, that belongs back in, I word search within that thing and I find the bit and I put it back in. That document by the end, I think was about 145 Wow.
So we have way more seasons. We can repitch this.
We can repitch the show.
Let's go back to the garbage. I think that one can work now.
So now you're on. Now you're on set.
On set, and let me also say, you write alone in a dark little room in your pajamas by yourself.
Turn the light on.
If you do that, no, I'm like a vampire. It hurts. If you do that well enough, a company gives you $40 million and puts you in charge of 300 people and says, "Congratulations." Those two skill sets, managing money, and writing are often they don't go together. Like being a great writer does not mean you're a great manager. Mm-hmm. I tried very hard. I actually really enjoyed it. I hope I was good at it.
So by the time you get to set, you're like, all right, I got my script here that like I've spent years working on. This is what we're going to shoot.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
Yeah. That's
So many things can happen. So many things can happen.
Shall we say the shitty rig
Yeah.
fix?
Okay.
To when you think, oh my God, I have this beautiful product and all of these people that
When I know why
hired
every
to work
line
on
is
it.
there.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you hear them deliver it, and the audience you have paid to laugh does not
just
laugh.
stands there like this.
What do you do?
You made a light that goes ha ha ha
I need to say that.
That's the laugh track. Comes in
It turns out you cannot make a JFK joke in Boston to this day. They will groan. They will not be okay with it. Learn that
It still hurts. It still hurts.
So that's when you come up with alt lines really fast. We tried to do that ahead of time. We would have alt pages, like if this joke's not working, let's try this one or this one. But sometimes it comes to you in the moment. I am not great at it. I like my dark room. I like to
Note
have
cards.
like this is why I'm not a traditional comedy writer. That pilot, it was so hard for me to have Craig and Sean pitch alt jokes on my like polished, beautiful, my little script. I would drive home and just sob, feeling like I had failed. I hadn't done my job because my jokes weren't funny enough, and they had to be changed on the day. And how embarrassing!
What if it's single cam though? Like what
Very
if
different.
it's like So let's say like on the day.
I do want to mention, I think I got better at it. I think I got better at letting people pitching alts myself.
But that's always the goal.
Yes.
You always want to get better.
But I think I got better at also not taking it personally.
yeah.
Like realizing it is, if you're in the team sport, it is the better thing for the show to have a better joke in. It doesn't mean I didn't do my job right.
Right.
It means
not a
that they're
reflection on
delivering
you.
it a certain way. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. But that first episode was fucking hard for me.
Yeah.
I just needed to say that I didn't cry every episode.
There's
There's no crying in baseball.
There are
There's so much crying in my baseball.
it's very similar to the way, it's like you go to the rental house, you get the tripod, and all of a sudden the tripod doesn't have the plate. Now you wrote the scene, we get to the set, and then somehow you learned that we lose the set 5 hours earlier than we're going to. We need a quick rewrite. Like what are the ways to like, is there a
Do
quick...
you go off?
Yeah.
and,
I go off.
Right? Okay.
I go off. If sometimes I got notes on a scene that would shoot later in the day. And I remember I always had my computer with me, like in terms of what do you bring to set. I don't think I've traveled without my computer for more than like 6 hours in 7 years. Like I have to have it near me, especially on that job, so that I could rewrite the script and send it off to our script coordinator to get the pages out. But
Do you ever write on your phone?
No, because Final Draft on a phone is horrible.
But do you ever write like stuff and then
voice notes?
put it and then put it in, or do you always sit in front of your computer?
I find it so helpful to sit in front of a computer. Sometimes I'll longhand it. I'll write it on a script.
Okay.
Like not like David E. Kelly, who writes on a legal pad. That's how he writes all of his scripts.
Fowler comes out with a
Longhand on a legal
typewriter.
pad. Yeah, right.
Sound is like, shut up.
That's how
And I'm like, I will fire you. Aren't I a great manager?
famous.
If something's not working and you have time and you have to rewrite it, how much time do you have? Like, what's that?
Depends. It's been 2.5 minutes. It's been 20 minutes between like blocking rehearsal and lighting. It's been a day. Like,
how do you deal
it's
with
on the spot?
How do you
sometimes.
deal with at that point? Like me, as let's say a costume designer comes in and is like, you know what I think could probably work here, or like an actor is like, hey, actually, this would be great. So like you can say no easily to a costume designer who's pitching you a line, because that's not my job. Like I'm out of my lane. So when they come to you and say, this is dumb, I'm not saying this. And the whole crew turns and is like, what happens? Like, what do you do?
Like I said, I next time will absolutely be less emotionally invested. I think I had a really hard time hearing anything like that and not taking it personally. And I don't know if that's a me thing or if that's totally human. I have no idea. But I do know, like, that's really hard. It's really, really, really hard to hear something is dumb or bad or whatever because you've spent so much time on it and nobody wants to feel dumb. Nobody
Or I
wants to
think
feel like a bad writer.
It's a great word choice. There's always a diplomatic way to say everything, and there's just certain people that like have never learned that.
This is what it is. This is the diplomatic way. I don't get it.
Oh yeah.
That's it all the time on set. If I hear an actor, I don't get it.
I think what I've learned is to ask questions. To keep asking questions to get at what is the actual issue here, because I don't get it. I would always lead that to me is like, oh, you just need more explanation as to why I got to where I got. And that's not what everybody wants. Turns out. That's their way of saying this is dumb. I don't want to say that. But I didn't know that at the time. So I was like, oh, okay, you don't get it? Here's where I'm coming. Let me give you a 10-page document or a 10-minute speech about
And
how
they're
I got
scrolling
here.
on their phone.
And they just like, that is not the conversation they want to have. Which is absolutely fine. We all communicate in different ways. I've learned that I need to, and I learned this from Craig because he would go into like dad mode sometimes. I saw how good of a dad he was by just saying like, what do you mean by that? Why do you feel that way? Let's talk about that. And then like, if it's an executive giving you a note, you say, yeah, totally. We'll take a look at it. And they'll forget it. They'll forget the note.
How many times can you say 2 minutes? Give me 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Can you ever say, like, I know it's a pain in the ass for script supervisors and, the rest of us, but can you say, do it your way and then do it my way?
Absolutely.
Like,
absolutely. Let's try it. I would say, a lot of times I would say, let's do it once as written, please. Like, because again, no one else is in the edit with me. A line may seem like pretty innocuous, but the implications could be huge down the line for ways I'm the only one thinking about. And then you're fucked. Like, if you don't have it the way you need it, I'm fucked. I'm the only one who knows.
I think it's important to note that, like, actors too, they are not, even though they are considered, top of the food chain, they do not have future scripts.
Unless they're a producer.
Unless they're a producer, which, and even then, they don't read them.
So they
it
might
doesn't
just not
matter.
know where it's
so
leading.
They don't ever. So, like, they might be arguing about a line that you've spent years, developing and writing because it literally triggers the next, like, B story.
Yeah.
And they're fighting you about it, but, like, you can't really, that script isn't locked, that line's not done. Like, you have to sort of do this dance of, like, well, here's what could happen. And then you get into an argument about, well, that's a dumb B story for the rest of the thing. And so you have to, like, I think, be very
firm but flexible. It is firm but flexible.
But
it is
also,
just,
you can't give them everything they want.
No. And the people-pleasing me, part of me, the codependent part of me, the part that wanted everyone to like me on Kevin, had a really hard time with that, of knowing when there are hills to die on and when it will change the DNA of the show and then I won't understand how to keep writing it. Like, that was a big fear of mine. So I just tried to be curious. I tried to ask questions. I hope I will continue to just get better and better at it. I will never pretend that I was great at it, but I think about the last scene of Kevin a lot. It's Annie and Mary Hollis on the porch. I always knew this is how I wanted to end the show. Even though I didn't know it was going to be the end initially, the second season, we had broken most of it. And then the network was like, it's your last one. It's like, huh.
It's weird going into a show filming a season knowing that it's canceled.
It's weird for everybody.
Yeah.
I think it's weird for the vibe on set. It's weird for your relationship with everybody. It's weird because people are looking for their next job while they're on your job, like other than me, because I still have to devote everything I have to this one thing. Nobody
still
else
want it to be
does.
good.
Still want it to be good. So I knew that I wanted to end the show with those two on the porch because that's whenever I lost sight of what the show meant, I thought of those two women on that porch. That was like the DNA of the show to me.
Bonding. Yeah.
And I wanted to slowly pull out and see the burnt house behind them, like they're moving on from that trash heap and they will go and live a life together in whatever way that looks. And, it's my version of a happily ever after. Annie, Mary Alice, and I talked about that scene a lot. And we had calls about it. I mean, it's the last scene of the show. They are entitled. I'm entitled too. It's the last scene of my show. But essentially, it's those two on the porch. And what triggered like the discussion and everything is just nuance. Like, the network needed this one line in. They needed the line of Allison to say, because Kevin has died, he's burnt in the house. Patty says, he finally did what you wanted him to do. Like, he finally did something you wanted him to do. And Allison says, I didn't want this, not anymore. The network needed that line. I didn't want this, not anymore. Because that's the conclusion of her journey. She started out the show, I'm going to kill my husband. She ends the show saying, he died and it's not going to make me happy. That is her entire arc. Sure, if you're a network, I understand why you want that. It's also not a line that bums me out. I'm okay with that. For Annie and Mary Hollis, their individual character stuff was very important to them. I don't remember all the iterations, but I do know we got to set, we did the scene as written, and then it was not the scene we shot. We changed a lot in the moment on the day. And, again, there are versions of people in my position who would say, no, we're going to do the last scene of my show the way I fucking want to. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think that was the best version of the scene, my way. It was just my way. Mm-hmm. I didn't think it was the best way. And I think that's very hard. That was very, very hard to do. But I am so happy with the thing we came up with together. It was difficult, but I think that's how a lot of good things happen is, how easy would it have been for me to just say like, nope.
Right.
The day would have been so much easier for me.
Well, there, like you're saying, there are times where an actor goes, well, that's stupid. But there also have to be times where an actor, like, this is my character. I have now become this person. Let me tell you what I think that they think will happen. Yeah. And they do help. They contribute in a positive way as well.
I think it's all about negotiating in good faith. Mm-hmm. I think it's all like knowing where someone is coming from. Are they coming from a place of actually like, oh, you think your neck looks bad in this shot? That's where this random note is coming from, is you want to be standing so that you look better. I understand. We can do that. Just say that. We could do that. Right. But there are times also when like they have actually like really thought about the story and they know their character better. And like Annie and Mary Hollis gave me a note early in season 2 about how at each other Patty and Allison were. And I was like, you know what? That's right. I want to see them, like, of course, there will always be conflict between them. That is television. But I want to see them be friends more. We spent the whole first season developing this friendship. They need to like each other more. I'm so grateful for that note. Doesn't mean I was happy to get it in the moment. Like, no, of course, I felt like an asshole. I felt like an idiot. I didn't say that. But, like, I always want to do things right the first time.
But also look at the other thing. Like you said, Neil wasn't a single cam person, but when he broke into the single cam world, like Alex, like becoming a drama, like his character blew open.
God.
And it's like you see,
talk about like a shitty rig like fix for something is like I said, we were going to kill him off, and he was so good that we didn't want to. And Craig was like, Valerie, you're not going to want to hear this, but I don't think we can kill Neil. And I was like, fuck you. That's always been the end of the first season. Stop talking to me. I didn't say any of that. I probably said, okay, but I'm going to go think about it. I said, here's the thing. If we can think of a better ending for the first season, then I'm fine not killing him, but we have to think of it before we just decide not to kill him. I also don't want a dead body for season 2. That's a huge bummer story-wise to me. Like, I don't want to see people try to get rid of a body. It's annoying. And so I went and I sat alone at my dining room table and realized, oh, what if instead of dying, he loses that benefit of the doubt I talked about? Like, he loses that ability to stay in a multicam and have all of his things be funny. And like, what if his life becomes very serious and he goes into single cam? And I was like, that's a better end. Now I'm totally fine changing it because we have a better avenue out. And it blew, like, first of all, we knew Alex could do it.
Right.
He's so good.
But it's also this cool thing for him now too, because it's like if he's always been a comedy guy, now he's got this thing on his reel. Like you might have helped his career get into like this other situation where like now he can audition for these roles and he's got something to show people. Like, look what I can do.
I hope so.
Which
I mean,
like,
I would hire him again in a heartbeat.
But it could have been one of those things. It's like if you were so gung ho about like it has to be done this way, it's like, well, now he's typecast or something. It's like these
now
little things
dead.
that could have happened.
Now he's dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you never know what one of these little tiny script changes could do for somebody's whole life.
When you're writing these things, episode 6 of season 1, Kevin gets into an eating contest with some hated sports figure in Boston, like in the Boston area. So when you're breaking the story, you're like, who would that be? Who would Kevin despise so much that he is determined to eat the steak faster than? And like, it's a whole sitcom episode, and it's like, well, Eli Manning. And you just like, you break around it and you make it so that like, yeah, it could be Eli, it could be any sports figure, because who the fuck knows how you get to Eli Manning. But then you actually have to write the script, and the jokes Kevin is making, they can't just be about vague sports guy number one. Like they're all Eli Manning dependent. And then, of course, we don't get Eli Manning. We got Sean Avery, who was lovely, but it requires a whole rewrite of all of those
now
jokes.
it's hockey, not football, and it's like the jokes are
jokes are completely different. And also, you know, what Sean Avery can do is probably very different from what Eli Manning can do as an actor. And so,
Yeah, Eli's got all those State Farm commercials or something. That he does.
he's a pro.
He's a pro.
Yeah.
Wasn't that Peyton?
Same difference.
Yeah.
But like,
This is why I didn't write the jokes. But so, yeah, I remember one day we were shooting that episode and Derek comes up to me and he's like, yo, Valerie, these jokes are fucking great. I can't believe you know this much about hockey. And I was like, Derek, I don't. I didn't write a blessed one of these, but thank you for thinking I did. That was all Sean and Craig. I will absolutely admit that one. But yeah,
awesome.
you gotta like always be ready to pivot, but always keeping in mind, like what I would tell actors if they had a problem with the scene, I would always try to say like, okay, here's what I need from this scene. Here's what I need to happen for the next thing. Here's the thing I want to get across. Here's the important little thing that's good for the network that, you know, I would always just try to keep in mind that one like through line that I needed to maintain. That was my job. And then everything else, at least on this job, was kind of a discussion. I think on the next job, I've learned not everything has to be a discussion. But, you know, it's easy to say until I'm on set and somebody says like, why is this line here? Could it be this? And then you're like, why is that line there? Could it be that?
What's really great about this dynamic is like the three of you all worked on this show together.
Yeah.
You got a showrunner, a gaffer, costume designer. There's a line between you and Bert.
Yeah.
Right?
I did not gaff. Let's be.
Oh, you did. You did.
No, I was electric.
You were
I was
electric.
the
You were
I was
electric.
third.
So
He was Sparks.
it was Sparks. But it's like right between you and Bert is this line. Right.
Yeah.
So, but the show is a little bit of a different dynamic.
Yeah, like we're literally called below the line workers,
Right.
Bert and I, and Valerie's called an above the line worker.
But there's this great you do care about the crew.
Yeah.
I will say more than some people in your position. But you are very quick to remind her that she is not one of us.
Oh, yeah. Rebecca likes to say that before we were friends, I thought I was one of the crew. She might be right. But here's the thing. I had been the person getting the person in my position coffee what felt like so recently. So it was like I remembered what it was to be below the lines. I didn't feel above the line yet. I felt I was embarrassed. Like I felt like an imposter. Like we've talked about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I had been a staff writer. I hadn't even produced. And then suddenly I'm the boss of 300 people. And I definitely had Craig. I had help. But like I did not feel in a position of authority. I felt like I understood the show and had answers when people asked them of me creatively. Absolutely. I knew what I wanted.
Plus, you're a young showrunner.
I'm a
so
young
half
woman.
of the crew was older than you.
Yeah.
Like we get on set and like I was always say like I've been in this business for 25 years and it's like I've been on 25 different sets.
That's right.
You know, like at any given time. And I think it's like different when then you say like I come in and this is my first time doing this. It's also your first time being on set for multiple episodes.
Yes. And by the way, like I could understand how fucking obnoxious it is to have to teach someone like me how set works when I'm the boss. But the thing that I think was always in my head was nobody's been on this show before. None of us. And I'm the one who has the answers of how this show should go because that's what I'm paid to do. So that's where I felt comfortable, is having answers and being available and answering any question that anybody had at any time of day.
Yeah, no. And I think like that was really important that you knew the time constraints that we were all under. And like I would always say like the biggest, like the hardest problem I have is getting the answers I need, because what people forget is like once I get the answer from you, there's 10 more hours of work that have to go into that costume to get it to set. And if we shoot the next day, a lot of showrunners or producers will think, well, if I just answer them by the end of the day, it's fine because we don't shoot it until tomorrow. So then if they answer at 6, I have to somehow get that costume to set and ready by 6 a.m. the next day. So I'm working all night. And that's something that, like, because Valerie was like more present than a lot of showrunners or creators of shows, like we had a little more access to her. We were also on location, and like you weren't going like home every night where you had like all this other stuff going on. Like we were all kind of going to the people that were on location. Yeah. And so like there was a little more accessibility when you're like living with someone in the same building than like you're all going back to your separate homes. Like, and I think that makes a big difference too, as far as like feeling like a community and feeling like it's more collaborative because you're literally living in the same building together. Yeah. So it's different.
I think going forward, I think I need to accept my role a little bit better. It's like, do I have to ask everybody if they want anything from Crafty on my way there? I probably don't, because no one's going to say yes. No one's going to say that they want something from me. That's fine.
I remember that question so many times.
Yeah.
Like just walking.
Because
why? Why are you asking me?
We all want to go to Crafty to leave set for a break. So like, because don't take that away from us.
Well, that's true. But I was so I got my, for so long in my career, I got my sort of validation from being helpful. For the first time, I was asked to accept help and know what was right. That's such a hard shift. Right. And so my way of being helpful was offering to get you something from Crafty.
And I think it's like the things
every
you
time.
can control.
That's right.
Versus the things you can't. Yeah.
Do we like that in a dynamic of a film? Do we like a little more of a blend between above and below the line?
Not
or do
unless
we
you're
like
going to pay me as
line?
much as the above line. No, I think I like everyone. Me personally, who like, I've said this, and I know that Bert, you reluctantly said it before, like, oh, it was like a family. Like, I do not think of work that way. Like, I stay in my lane, I go to work, you're not my family. I have my family. Like, and so I know that like somebody in Valerie's position is making 40 times more than me. Like, don't ask. Like, I watch like above the line people, they get to sit down a lot of the day and people bring them lunch and coffee and they fly first class and they get driven to and from set. Like, I just feel like just own it in a way.
Yeah.
There is a like I
Make
know
my job easier. Like, answer the questions in a timely manner, but like it's almost insulting if you're going to ask me if I want something from Crafty.
Well, okay, Crafty is one thing.
Heard.
Well,
no take.
and I think
not you, but like other people.
And I will say there's a way that you went about it where we all did kind of have these different rapports with you where we did talk about different things and like we would ask you I think there were multiple times people were sitting at the monitor like why, like the first time the laugh track came on and like Craig's like, hey, everybody laugh. And we're doing a take and we're all like, why the fuck would I laugh during a take? Yep. And like, we're talking like all the crew's talking. It was like, these people should shut the fuck up. And it's like, it was like this really weird kind of thing. But after having all of those interactions, like a rapport with you, like, yes, you are a showrunner. Yes, it is work, but on a certain level, there is a friendship there. So asking me something for Crafty is completely different. Yeah. There is something that I absolutely hate where especially when I'm a day player, I've said this before, when I was a day player, I don't meet anybody because I don't know if I'm going to be back there. Sure. It was a very disconnected, go to work, get it done, go home. And one of the things I hate most is when they call wrap and you're trying to pick stuff up and like the director or the producer or whatever just goes around to whoever they see and, hey, thanks for today. You don't know who the fuck I am. Why are you taking, like, let me work, go away. There's this really weird, like, unless you have that personal rapport with somebody, I don't care. Like, you're the one writing my check. Don't fucking talk to me.
That's interesting. I actually appreciate that.
No, I hate that so much.
Also, if they're not.
By the way, welcome to my life because you appreciate it.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
You cannot make everyone happy.
Right.
No.
Right.
But there's also you
just got to do what feels right.
You're an AD. Yeah. Also a different step.
Right.
So
it's
they're
still below the line, but it's closer to
But you also know
interact.
the director.
Yeah.
You're talking with I am a third electrician.
Yeah.
I am nobody. I am cleaning up a light and I'm still working.
Yeah.
You are taking me away from my work so that you can feel good about yourself while you're walking out the door to go to your car or get driven home. I'm here for another hour.
So the general
Let me
goodbye
do
is
it.
better.
It makes
Like,
it
hey
seem like
guys,
he
thank you.
doesn't know about
You're
your
here
job.
tomorrow. Yeah, you're here tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. Don't like if you don't know me, don't pretend you do. That is
Don't present. Like, I think the difference with Valerie, and I'll say this, is like I wrote you a card at the end of the show that said you
I could recite it right now if you want me to.
I have a card from you.
Well, I'm gonna hear.
Really?
Yeah,
Let's hear what the
it's in
card
my
said.
car. I can show it to you.
I said
What did Rebecca
what
say?
did
Valerie?
I wrote you
You restored my faith in showrunners.
yes.
Oh.
Because when you would come over at the end of the day and say thank you, you would be like, no problem. Like, I'll see you tomorrow. Because you took the time to actually, like, what you didn't know, you took the time to know. And you took the time to, like, come over and talk to people and, like, hear their concerns and get to know them when it wasn't convenient. And I think that that's the difference. Like, if Valerie on her way out was like, hey, thanks, I'll see you tomorrow,
Right.
you would be like, great. But, like,
That's
if a
what I'm saying.
director
The
that's
personal connection. It's that personal
like
connection.
I've worked with a director that sat in it was a very hot shoot, and they sat in an air-conditioned tent that no one was allowed to go in and spoke to us through a bullhorn.
Absolutely not.
And then they would come over at the end of the day and be like,
Nope.
thanks,
Oh my
bud.
God.
And
That's
I was
so
like,
ungenuine.
Yeah. You don't even know. Yeah. You don't even know what I did today.
you don't know what I did. You don't know what I do. So I think, yes, like, absolutely, you can't please everyone. It's different dynamics. Like, I think what you like faith you restored in me at the end of that job was just the human capacity of, like, everyone on this job is a human being. I might not know all of their names, but we all felt appreciated.
I'm really glad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Really glad.
I don't know if I've experienced that. Like, you know, I worked on that long running show Elementary and The Code, and, like, I've experienced that on those shows. I would have never stayed for 7 years if I didn't experience that. But I think, like, there was a time after those shows that I consecutively worked for people that would sit in a tent or whatever and just be like, day one on the show, give you the speech. We're all family. We're making this together.
Elementary had this cool thing though too. Every Tuesday they would like watch they'd
play it in the cafeteria.
So it's like during
Oh,
lunch you could watch the episode that was coming out that week. Like the crew got to see it
And, like,
before
we
everybody
did
else.
this, yeah, and it was like nice because that is generally a privilege for above the line people. And it was
Yeah.
like, we got the cut. It might not look exactly like this, but like
No
we're
VFX.
sharing it.
There was
Yeah,
there was
no
never
visual
like it was
effects. They
always
would
the green
shoot the gun,
screen.
yeah. But it was amazing, and like I think you took the time in the beginning, and when you stood there and said, this is my baby, it's not your baby, and like, but we are making this together. I think it's like actions louder than words. Like, if you're going to sit in a tent, an air-conditioned tent, and get sushi delivered when we have like the worst catering company in the world and we're all sweating, and then you're going to come around and be like, thanks for making this show with me. But I think, like, you, as much as you could, being in the position that you were in, chose to take a little bit of a more like human route to
Well, like
show
I
running.
said, I wanted to enjoy being there. I wanted to
Yeah.
enjoy the process. And that's not for me. Like, I'm so incredibly codependent that if everyone else is miserable, I will never be happy. I can't sit in the cooling tent and be like, oh, what a great day of work today. Like, I have a very strong awareness of everybody outside who is very
But in
miserable.
a way, none of us are ever going to be there if
Yeah.
you don't exist. So there is like this weird, like, you could sit there and be like, all these people have jobs because of the idea that I have.
How many
The
times
ego.
how many times did you guys turn down the heater?
Never. Oh, wait, what do you mean?
Like, hey, do you guys want a heater today? No, we're out here. We've got our coats.
Never. I always had that heater. I called that heater my boyfriend. My boyfriend was around all the fucking time.
I think
Peter the heater.
But did I go to my trailer and watch on Q-Take? No.
What trailer?
I had a trailer.
Really?
Yes, exactly.
Oh shit.
you never
Yes.
saw it.
No.
But like,
I use the bathroom in there all the time.
and not that,
No one was in it. She was just like walked right in.
and not that there's anything wrong with that either. But like, the way I wanted to go about it was I wanted to enjoy being there, and I felt like if we created a good place to be for 10 hours, by the way.
Yeah.
I will do that every single time I am in charge of a show, if possible. I love 10-hour
You
days.
can sit in your trailer and watch Q-Take as long as you come out and you don't say like "good job," as long as you say like "hey, I'm sorry, like I got the heat and you've
Totally.
been freezing all day," and like
Totally.
that's just because I'm the executive producer.
I'm like, and when I'm saying like, there's not one's not right,
No,
one's not
right
wrong.
and one's not wrong.
But what I'm saying is there is this real connection, and there is this totally fake persona that some people put on to I'm going to say to bolster themselves, because there's no other reason to do that.
Yeah.
And don't fucking do that.
Well, I think there's an interesting point here is that even though this is your first time as a showrunner, there's components of what you did that you may have been oblivious to because but you still want to keep because you can see the effect it had on the crew.
Here's where I want to go the next time. If I'm lucky enough to do this job again, and probably my therapist would say like, don't say that. When I do this job again, I want to still maintain that ability for you to come to me if you were a costume designer, like to say, can you please like, can I get an answer? Like this is why, whatever. I would love to still say goodnight to you and have it mean something, or like know the story about how you married your wife, or know like what people's kids were for Halloween. Like I want to be set mom. I do really enjoy it. That I don't want to like, sometimes the advice I got was like, swing your dick around. It's just not me. Like I don't know how to do that. I want to run a set that way, but I want to be a little bit less available. I want people to think twice before texting me. Like it shouldn't be easy to ask me absolutely anything that you want. I am the boss and I need to own that better. So like not everything is a discussion next time. I will probably be a lot less social, but also because it won't be COVID and I can have a separate life. But I want to maintain that distance of like, you know, and what I've also learned is you don't have to be friends while making the show to be friends after the show.
Yeah, we weren't friends during the show.
No, we were not. I mean, we were like set friends.
Friendly.
Yeah, but we didn't go out like after work or anything like that. But like, I just have a very strict policy of really no socializing
Especially
at work.
with producers.
Especially with Above the Line, because I find that like, you know, like let's just say like we were all to go out and get drinks and I got really drunk. And then the next day, something happened in the wardrobe department that was a mistake that was completely unrelated to me being drunk the night before. But what are you going to think about as my boss?
Yeah.
I'm like, I just will never put I think that we already are swimming against the current. And I think like a lot of people in film and television constantly, like everybody wants my job. So I am like people below me, other people coming up, like they want to be costume designers. So they are looking for mistakes that I'm making. Everyone is looking for mistakes that I'm making. Everyone on set, if they're not secure in who they are looking for mistakes that everybody else is making. So it takes away from them. So I always just want to keep it really professional. But I have made the best friends. I'm like, those are people that I really like and we have this great set rapport. But I won't go out socially with anyone until after the job's over because it's just like, it's a very gray area.
All you need to be friends with Rebecca is get her tickets to sit on the Green Monster at a Red Sox game and she'll be friends with you for life.
I was like, oh, well, I'll hang out with you. It's fine.
The show had wrapped.
Fine.
It's just a balance of like, but the thing is you can't do that with everybody. Like you can't be available all the time to everyone.
Because then people start pitching you their shows.
But I know.
The 1 degree of separation. That's what it is, right?
Yeah, I think it's really important.
Truly, what it all comes down to, all I want on set for everybody is mutual respect.
Yeah.
Respect for your schedule, for your job, for what you bring to the table, for the fact that this isn't your life. But I want respect for the unseen work I have done, for how like I have to answer not just your email, but 15 other department heads that I might have missed one. Like it is just mutual respect of like, you know, and I want people who deserve that respect too. Like who are good at their jobs. And then we get to have fun because I don't have to worry about you doing your job. When I showrun again, I will do everything in my power to keep a 10-hour day because I think when talking about how do we do this and still have a life, have a good time, like you have to enjoy the process, not the product, not just the product. 10 hours, God, the difference between starting at 8 and ending at 6.
Yeah.
starting at 7 and ending at 8, that is a completely different day. That means people don't see their kids. It means that they get up and leave when it's and like leave work when it's dark. It's such a different lifestyle.
You don't burn them out as soon as
Well, not to mention there's usually, I mean, there's very few places that I know that the commute's not at least an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Even in
You
New
know.
York, it's
Yeah.
an
Oh,
hour.
yeah.
Right.
And I know I always play devil's advocate and I sound like I hate this business, but I love this business. But I always have to say the other side of it is some people want 12 hours. It is, you get overtime after 8. And so you get
No,
those 2 more hours of
absolutely.
overtime. And I respect that. But I'm just, because I think a lot of people in this business do identify completely with this business. It is their social life. It is where they met their husbands or wives or significant others. And it is all of their life. For me, it's not. So I want to get out and get to my life. And
Yeah.
I think it's like it's a fight within below the line people.
But I totally understand. And we had 10 hours on Kevin. They said because of COVID, I never fully understood. But I was thrilled to have 10 hours. And I think we could largely do that because we could shoot out 20 pages of a multicam in 2 days.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it would how it would be going forward, but I'll try. But I remember it wasn't a choice. It wasn't my choice. So I got to I would ask a lot of, like, I remember talking to John Ryder about it. I was like, do you prefer 10-hour days, or are you mad that you're not getting, or upset that you're not getting the 2 extra hours of overtime? And he was like, oh, everyone I have talked to on this crew prefers this. And, if you don't want to work on that show, you don't want to work on that show. But I think at least most people I've talked to prefer to have a life.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Me
Yeah.
too.
I mean,
and
I
there's a-
prefer it 100%.
there's a-
And I prefer it. And I'm the fucking boss. See?
No, I mean that's
I'm
what's
getting
good.
there.
Standing
My look on it is it also depends on what job I'm like. If I'm coming to work in New York, like yeah, sure, like the 10-hour day is nice, but I'm also going home to an apartment that's not my family. Like it's like if it's a traveling job, dude, work me 18 hours a day. Like
Sure.
then I'm not spending the money I'm making, and I'm going home, and then it's like and then I'm going home with a pocket. So it's like there are there are different scenarios where something might change, but overall, yeah, I mean. I also can't complain. For once in my lifetime, I got the show that's close to my house. It was
my God.
It was an 8-minute drive for me.
my God.
Like,
And it was a 10-hour day.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my God, I'm home at 5 for dinner with my wife.
That's
I beat
amazing.
her home from work. What the fuck is this?
That's
like,
amazing.
So Valerie, what's next? Where are we going next? I know you touched on it a little bit at base that you're writing something with Rebecca, and like you're also doing a pilot. Like, what's the next step for you now?
So after the show wrapped, I took quite a long hiatus of just not working. I took meetings. I wrote on my own. I still wrote for an hour every day, but I just needed time.
There's also post on a show that not a lot
That's
of
true
people
too.
know
Yeah.
about.
So
So
we
you did it
wrapped
for a
in
little
May.
while.
I did
Yeah.
post until late July. Then you do press until it's done airing in October. So, and then I got a job on Halloween. Who am I kidding? I didn't take that much time off. It
Yeah.
felt like a lot of time.
I was like, you were pretty much
It
working
felt like a
the
lot of
entire time.
But what I really wanted to do was just help row the boat in a room. I didn't want to be in charge. I just wanted to help. I just wanted to show up and lend my brain if it was useful. And if not, I'll fuck off. That's fine. And so I did that on a show for Amazon for Cruel Intentions. It'll come out soon. No, I don't know. It'll come out sometime. They're shooting it now. It was just so nice to go to work and go home.
Collect the check and
To
go home.
really help. I love being helpful. I really tried. I really hope I was, but it wasn't my life. It wasn't my emotional well-being wasn't tied to it. It was like a job. It was just a job, and it was great.
Which I think is important when we talked about a lot of people that were showrunners won't go back to being staff
Yeah.
writers. They want to be the boss. But I think too it's a great lesson in if you set up a room for your show that's your baby that you spent years, you could get a writer like Valerie and who just wants to.
I know how hard the job is. I just want to help.
Yeah, but
I just wanna
also
help
it's
you.
not your it's just your job.
That's right.
And I think you have to remember that as the boss, where it's like, this is my dream. It's not yours.
Yeah.
And you have to respect people's time
Right,
outside of
right.
work.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that you can jump back and forth, which I think makes you understand and why we all loved working for you, because you have that perspective of, I'm not just a showrunner. That's the only job I'm ever going to do. I'm only ever going to be the boss.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed definitively not being the boss. I'm a consulting producer on that, which really just means like you're not there on set. You know, you're in the room, you're helping. I have a script, but I've been getting like casting emails on my episode, but I have nothing to do with it anymore. And I'm like, I have nothing to do with it anymore. That's so nice. But now, having done that, having had like a bit of a palate cleanser, and then 5 months of mandated not working, I have written. I came out of the strike with 2 scripts, which is awesome. I'm so glad. I wrote the script with Rebecca, and then I finished one of my own. And, you know, I talk a big game about not having my emotional well-being attached to any project anymore. But I'm like, oh, if either of those go, fuck me. Oh, good luck to me not taking that personally. I will try. I will really try. But yeah, so I have, you know, and then I have stuff to pitch sometimes with, you know, ideas for shows that I won't write until someone pays me, because I guess I can be at that level now. But I have to, like, when I write for an hour every day, gotta write something. And a lot of times I will just write in a journal. So I have a record of every day of my life for the last 7 years, which is wild.
Sometimes you'll write one line too.
Sometimes I'll write one line.
Or literally we tried, I mean, I think one time I was like, is there a better way to say, like, I don't like men? No, I don't like women. Instead, not like as a person. Like, we need a synonym
the line
that
in the
says,
show,
I don't like men.
It was a guy saying it, and he was saying, basically, I'm gay.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, in this scene, we need to know that this guy is gay. And
How
we just
do we say
brainstormed
that
for
in
a
one
full
line?
hour about
One
how
line.
to say it without having him say, I'm gay, to a room full of people he's known for years and know he's gay.
But we need the
like, not
audience
hitting
to
it on
know.
the
But you
head.
need the audience to know. So like, and that's what drives me crazy about like watching bad writing is people will just write, well, you know, I'm gay. And it's like, no, who says that? Who says that to a
Do you
room
want
full
to
of people?
recite the
Well,
Marvel
you
line?
can't-
What is it?
There's a line that's going around on the internet right now from Madame Web that's
The trailer from Madame Web. It's like, I recognize him from the photo I have of him working with my mother in the on spiders in the rainforest in the Amazon. Like, it's just insane. It
You
is
just
just
keep
like
talking.
boom,
keep
boom,
hitting the
boom,
head.
boom, boom. It's like,
Okay,
here's
so,
all the information
like,
that you need.
You have this connection with Annie Murphy, and I mean, arguably, I would say that Schitt's Creek has one of the best scenes where they talk about like the wine. Sometimes I drink a red. Sometimes I drink a white.
Yes,
sometimes
I
I
love
like
that.
a
I love
rosé.
that scene.
Sometimes I drink a Merlot that
That's right.
was a Pinot Gris. Like things
that
like
is
that.
something
Like
that you think about. I mean, I have no idea how that scene was written, but I do know like it can take a full day of like, how do we get this across? Like that is like, I'm good for a week after that of feeling good about myself.
Yeah.
I figured out
like
that
one
scene.
line, and we're just like, how do we need a synonym for gay?
But like an interesting way that this guy would say it in this context. It's just,
It was an hour. It was probably more. It was probably, I think it was you wrote for an hour and I wrote for an hour. And then I went out and took the dogs for a walk. And I came back and I said, I got it. And it was literally like, both of us pitched maybe 15 ideas.
Yeah.
Like
is the
back
problem
and
that
forth.
you're both women?
Oh
And
my
we're both
God.
gay. I was like, how do I do this?
Can we say what the line is, or
I don't even remember.
I think it was,
That scene's cut.
I would like her a lot more if she had a dick.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
nice.
cool.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that. I like that.
And it was like, oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Like, right. So I was like, oh, thank God. I was
Oh, that's
like,
right. It was okay. So it was a bunch of people playing this game that Rebecca and I play, which is how many drinks would you need to sleep with that person?
You're like,
So we'll
30.
look across a pool in LA and be like, 8.
8.
I need to be blackout.
You play
And
this
so-
with your boss.
Like brown
You
liquor.
Oh,
Yeah.
we played this post.
This is
post
after
job.
the shoot.
Post
This is
job.
after the
shoot.
Oh my God.
It's like a mimosa. It's like, oh, the guy must be really hot.
Yeah,
or that girl
exactly.
must be really hot.
Exactly.
And if it's like a 30 rack.
And so they're playing that in the show, and the guy was like, 7 drinks, 3 if she had a dick.
Yes. So
Oh,
it's
I like
like,
that.
yeah.
That's really
Exactly.
like subtle. It's really
But
subtle.
like all day.
Yeah.
All day. And then if we ever make the show and it ever goes to set, some actor
When?
says I want to
When?
change that line, I'm just going to be like, all day.
You can show them this
All
episode.
day.
This episode.
Yeah. You said earlier on too, you like briefly went over this when you were talking like about how you got started, and you were like, oh, I wanted to be a writer, but you know, you said something like acting was harder than writing or something like that.
I was told that writing was less that your odds of getting a career in writing was worse than becoming a career actor.
How do you feel about that now? Like, how do you feel about that statement that somebody told you, like, doing anything in this industry?
I feel like the gulf between like everybody who tries to be a writer and those who are successful, in my mind, is a lot of people who don't write, who don't actually produce material. Like I said, you don't have to write every day, but you have to find a way to actually have pieces of writing to show people if you say you want to be a writer.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that mysterious. I don't think it's impossible. Was it hard? Absolutely. I got so lucky so many times, but I got lucky. I had worked hard and I was ready. So it's not just that I was in the right place at the right time. It was that I had all this work leading up to that moment where the person on SEAL team said, do you have any sample that you want me to send this agent? And it's like, And then from there, like 15 steps later, 25 steps later, I have a show.
As a writer that says, no, I don't have anything ready. Like,
You're
that's
fucked.
kind of a weird thing then
Like,
you're not a writer.
You might work on SEAL team then. Like, you might be a staff writer on SEAL team and keep growing on that show, but you won't grow beyond it.
Whatever your style, just right? Like
Yes.
whatever it is, whatever your style is out there as a writer is just right. It doesn't matter if it's
so
every day
terrifying.
for an hour or a week.
It's
I
whatever
think
so
you
it
write
has
hard
to
and
do
dig up.
with like, there are some people that are naturally talented that like have a different trajectory, like more naturally talented than other people. And I do think there is some natural talent. Like I said, like why I'm not a brain surgeon, because I'm a more visual art type person. But I think there is like some natural talent, but you have to take that natural talent and you have to do the work.
That's right.
Like it is like I'm naturally talented as a person who can sew and draw on fabrics and like, put together an outfit. But I didn't just become a costume designer because somebody saw me do that and then plucked me off of the street. And like I was a PA, then I was a coordinator, then and then I put in the work and I observed just like you did, and I got everyone the right coffee and was in the right place at the right time at some point in my career. But that was because I was working to do that. And I think it's like important. I think a lot of people say I want to be a writer, and when I get the opportunity, I'm going to be great at it. But
and I'm not going to take a job unless I'm offered a writer's assistant job. And it's like, honey, you're right out of college. Unless you went to Harvard and your best buddy's dad runs Family Guy.
Right.
Take any job to meet someone. Like just get in there and work hard and impress as many people as you can. And I also think like what helped me so much in coming up was I remember I had a boss who said, writing is a party trick. Nobody wants to say it, but like you can learn it. It's not innate. It is not something you have or don't. Like there are definitely some things you have or don't.
Yeah.
But for
the ability to tell a story.
I would say 90% of writing is learnable. And once she described it as a party trick, I was like, oh, then that means if I work hard enough, which I know how to do, then I can do it.
Or you could just marry
And then I
James
slapped her.
Stolen and then you'll be fine.
Marrying rich is always my backup.
Or you can just marry rich and you'll be fine.
Skills don't matter without dedication and hard work. And on that note, I definitely want to say, Valerie, thank you so much for coming out and having you on the show. It's been really amazing to see the back end of how everything works in the writer's room, especially because that's something that I never knew. That was exciting for me.
It's so fun to be here.
Yeah. And I want to thank our co-host, Rebecca, for coming out and joining us. It's been really great having you both.
I want to thank you guys for having me.
Oh.
Right. Yeah.
It's
me
great
too.
to be back trapped in a room with all of you.
At least this time the air works, so we're not really
That's
sweating
Yeah,
as
I
much.
think it probably worked last time and you guys were just like vetting me, but it's way better this time.
We were grilling you to be a co-host. You just
If
didn't
you
know it.
zoomed in, I wasn't joking about profusely sweating. Like I think you could see on the last one I did the stream coming down my face.
Thank you guys again so much. Appreciate having you, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.